Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if future Naruto returns to Konoha, stronger than before and ready to finish what should have never been started. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. I have to retire. Here is in Sarutobi managed to wheeze out between tired lips. He sat at his desk wearing his full hat and robes, the various scrolls and messages laid out before him, with Naruto's being the most recent. Why did everything have to happen today? And all at once? And why wouldn't Tsunade take the damn hat? I've been telling you that for years, Tsunade jibed as she walked in. She looked not a day older than she did the last time she saw that little twerp of Minato's, but she couldn't say the same for her sensei. The years and the stress were really starting to wear down on him, and it showed. His wrinkles looked deeper, his eyes held more mist in them than they ever had before, and he looked tired enough to sleep on the pile of papers in front of him. Does that mean you're finally here to relieve me of my torture? The third chuckled lightly. Laughs were rare in his office as of late. Not even his grandson's antics brightened his mood anymore. Tsunade looked hard at the old man, seriously considering the option for what was the first time. Have you asked Kakashi? He would manage for a time, but he's not quite ready to run a village. He's used to small teams getting the job on hand done. Having one goal and doing whatever he could to accomplish it. A good quality, yes, but he's not finished fleshing it out. In a few years, I imagine his mind will have shifted to taking in the bigger picture as a whole, at the very least coming to see the village as a team to protect and lead. You're still pretty long-winded for your advanced age, I see. Tsunade sighed and sat down with a small smile. Enough wind to still give you a good sparring session if you upset me enough, that's for sure. Tsunade had to smile at the thought. It was likely true, even in her fighting peak, she could never truly lay a hand on her sensei, old age be damned. It was also true that someone would have to step in for him sooner rather than later, and she owed it to him to at least be a placeholder for the next Hokage's coming. I take it Jiraiya still isn't a candidate? Probably a stupid question. Hiruzen simply passed her the message Jiraiya had sent. Definitely a stupid idea. How can he really be that stupid? Tsunade asked in near exasperation. In all seriousness, Hiruzen looked her in the eyes and said, well, you did hit him in the head quite a bit as kids. Tsunade shot him an annoyed glance, cut me some slack, you know he had it coming to him. A chuckle was her only response. After a comfortable moment of silence had passed, Hiruzen asked in a weary voice, what are we going to do, Tsunade? Another war and most of our shinobi remember the last one. Tsunade leaned back in her chair, sighing as she stared at the blank wooden ceiling. Normally I'd say what we've always done. Win. But I understand your desire to end these wars. We've destroyed as many lives as we've saved and it's pretty heavy on my mind too. My point exactly. All of these wars over the years and almost nothing has changed. What will it take to convince Iwa and Kumo to work with us instead of against us? Tsunade bit her lip. There might be too much bad blood to avoid drowning in it, sensei. Hiruzen rubbed at his wrinkled face. What would you have me do, then? Follow Danzo's advice and just make sure there was no one left to wage a war at all. I'm saying, Tsunade drew out her words for the extra emphasis, that you should pass the problems off to someone else. You've dealt with them for more than long enough. And who would you have me give the hat to? Naruto? No, but maybe I can in a few years, depending on how he matures. The silence that invaded the room was laced with emotion. Surprise and resignation being the two most prominent ones. You'll take the position? Hiruzen asked quietly. He refused to meet her gaze, likely worried he might see the glint of a joke in her eyes. At least until Jiraiya's brat makes good on his promise and is ready, yes. Hiruzen stood up from his chair and walked around his desk. Tsunade stood as well, rising to match his height and expecting him to simply hand her the hat. Instead, he wrapped her in his thin yet still strong arms, giving her the first hug she had received from him since she had become a Chunin. Thank you, Tsunade. I know you never wanted this for yourself, so thank you for taking the hat before it killed me. Completely stunned, Tsunade didn't move. Hiruzen simply released her, set the hat he so despised in his advanced years on the desk, and walked out the door. Tsunade knew he'd tell the people who had to know to make it official, so she just let him leave. Let him have his day, it was his first real day off in far too many years. Tsunade picked up the hat and moved her way back to the old chair she had gotten used to seeing her sensei in. Taking the seat, she donned the hat. It fit her well. Then she read over the papers left out, the messages sent to Hiruzen. Hiding her first bottle of sake as Hokage sealed the deal. This was her burden to bear now, and by Kami, she wouldn't do it sober if she could help it. Why did you want to come back here again? Naruto asked aloud as he stepped onto the overgrown grounds of Kurama's temple once more. I told you, you have to be back in that reflection room for me to do what I have in mind. Naruto stepped into the main hall, it's nothing stupid, right? You won't give me a tail or turn me into a chick or anything. There was a loud snort from Naruto's mindscape. He took that as a maybe, so he was wary when he stepped into the somewhat familiar white room dancing with gray veins. Alright, what next, oh cryptic one? Naruto snapped out sarcastically. Just get your ass in here, kid. Naruto sat down with his legs crossed, comfortable enough to go into his mindscape. He had had plenty of practice doing so over the last year, and now it took no time at all. Alright Furball, what's the big plan? Naruto asked from his seat atop Kurama's head. You know I hate it when you appear on my head, right? With a flick of his head, Kurama sent Naruto hurtling to the ground. And we're here to try and create a contract. Pulling himself back up and straightening his clothes, Naruto asked, we already kinda have one, though. You live inside me and keep me alive, and therefore keep yourself alive. If I do this right it will be more of a summoning contract. Whoa, hold up. Since when has there been a fox summons? There isn't, at least to my knowledge. And you'd be summoning only me, not foxes. And where do you think I'd find the chakra to summon you of all things? Naruto was very skeptical of this plan. Naruto, you can literally store hundreds upon hundreds of seals full of your chakra as well as tapping into the chakra of the literal environment. You make a fair point. How's this work? Naruto conceded as he sat down in front of the Biju. I'll create the contract itself on your back and no one else will be able to sign it. This stays between you, me, and if I agree whoever my next Jinchuriki is. You'll be able to summon me at various strength levels, one for each tail, so you don't have to blow chakra every time I want out of here for a while. So I'll be spending enough chakra to not only summon your soul in various power levels, but also enough to create a physical body for you. Doesn't really sound worth it. I'll handle the manifestation of a body, you just get me and some of my power into the real world. Deal, Naruto stood, removed his shirt, and gave his back to Kurama. One of Kurama's massive claws touched lightly onto the skin of Naruto's spine, and his entire back was filled with black flowing markings that glowed with power. Naruto shivered at the warm sensation, and he felt it trail all the way down his spine, before flowering out to encompass the rest of his back. A year ago he would be hard-pressed to trust Kurama this much, but now it was nothing. I'm done. Go into the main hall of the temple and summon my one-tail form. Naruto had his shirt off as he walked into the main room of the temple, and he was constantly looking over his shoulder at the new black marks running down his back. Maybe people would mistake it for a tattoo. Naruto bit his thumb and ran through the seals to summon. What he did do differently, though, was reach his chakra to his back to feel for the contract. Naruto felt a subtle shift in his energy, as well as a slight heat on his back, and he knew he wouldn't summon a toad by accident. Slamming his hand down, Naruto saw a small circle of the usual seals appear before the puff of smoke blinded him. Standing there, under his hand, was Kurama. Barely bigger than the last time Naruto had seen Akamaru, the chibi version of the mighty Nine Tails, only sported one of the fluffy appendages. Ah, fresh air. Hello Naruto. Naruto, as much as he tried to suppress it, let out a loud, echoing laugh. He fell to his rear and rocked with the laughter, annoying Kurama to no end. What? It's just that, oh Kami. Your deep-ass voice is coming from a midget you. More laughter followed, even as Kurama huffed in his tiny form. It's not like I can just change my voice, let's just get back to Konoha. Naruto stood in the middle of the road, the towering gate of Konoha's wall staring him in the face. What would he come home to? How much could change in just a year? Who all would be home? In a while, Naruto? Naruto spun to face the voice directly behind him. Unsurprisingly, Kakashi stood there, nonchalantly reading his preferred literature. Why am I not surprised? You'd know I was back before I was even back. Naruto joked. It's good to see you, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi pat the top of Naruto's head as they started the walk to the gates. To tell the truth, I'm just returning from a mission with Jiraiya and Anko. I got lucky and decided to hang back for a bit. Naruto perked up at that. At the very least he would see both of his sensei today. After checking in at the gate, Naruto and Kakashi started to walk towards the Hokage's building. Hey, I'd say you're almost as tall as I am now, the masked man made conversation. Says I might be as big as Hiro-sensei when I'm finished growing. I guess I eat more bugs than he ever did. Naruto pulled a quick face at the thought of his previous year's menu. I wouldn't put too much stock into that, but you sure aren't the runt I remember trying to climb on my shoulders. The two walked in happy silence, Kakashi's words having started a mental trip down memory lane. Naruto had to agree, he had changed quite a bit since he left with Jiraiya. I'd say the change was for the better, even as annoying as you still are. Love you too, asshole. The duo walked into the Hokage's office to an unexpected sight. Hiruzen had changed even more than Naruto had. He had lost his wrinkles, his beard, and most likely his male reproductive organs. Hey there Jiji. You look, different than when I left. Naruto stumbled through his greeting, prompting Tsunade to lift her head up from her paperwork. Real clever, brat. Kakashi, Jiraiya already gave me a briefing so you're free to go. If you do me a favor and tell Jiraiya his troublemaker is back I'd appreciate it. Kakashi bowed as he left, giving Naruto an eye smile as he did so. That bastard could have at least warned him. So, not that I'm not happy for you or anything, but what happened to the old man? Naruto asked as he slid into a chair. Tsunade simply sighed as she moved her papers off to the side. He's old, Naruto. This job was killing him as surely as this war would have. Wait, we're in the middle of a war. Why didn't anyone call me back? Naruto sat up straighter, mild panic rising in his voice. Calm down, Tsunade's tone wasn't an amused one. Sensei did his best to prolong the attempts at peace talks until you could finish your year of training. It was difficult, but he managed to have the official declaration held off until earlier this week. Naruto relaxed back into the chair. I'll have to thank him then. So, what's our list of enemies looking like so far? Before Tsunade could respond, a third voice piped up from the side of the room. Better than it could be, but worse than it should, Jiraiya lazily interrupted. He was seated on the windowsill, looking bored as he doodled notes onto a pad of paper for something. Jiraiya, you can't keep pulling this stunt. I'm the Hokage now, Tsunade almost growled at him. Naruto had to suppress a smile. Hey, Hokage or not, you're my teammate first. And Naruto is my special little problem, so I figured I could barge in. Let it slide. Kurama prevented the slew of insults Naruto had prepared for the white-haired man. Fine. Then you can finish talking to him. I need a break and a drink, Tsunade insisted. Naruto had a feeling that she had planned to pass him off as soon as she could anyway. Much to his surprise, however, she didn't leave her desk for her break. Instead, she reached into one of the drawers and pulled out her own bottle. He should have figured. Alright Naruto, we'll continue just as soon as Shizune finishes up, Jiraiya hummed as he hopped off the window and made his way to the remaining chair. Naruto was confused, to say the least, and Kurama couldn't offer any insight. Then he understood all in a very short amount of time. Tsunade pulled the stopper from her bottle, the gentle pop nearly inaudible. The door flew open and a very frazzled pig holding Shizune burst into the room. Naruto sat in silent awe and confusion as she wrestled with the Hokage for the prized bottle of sake. The two ladies rolled over the desk and Shizune eventually popped up with the alcohol. She then ran from the room, screaming something about proper behavior in your position, and she was tailed closely by the older blonde. Ah, Jiraiya sighed as he put away his pen and paper, a lecherous yet stupid smile on his face. I love when she decides to take breaks. Focus, pervert, Naruto muttered under his breath. Oh, I'm focused alright. Ah. State of affairs, that's right. The Sannin snapped his fingers at his revelation. So, here's the basic rundown. Iwa and Kumo hate us, big surprise there, and half of Mist is now loyal to Orochimaru and will probably attack as well. Suna is on our side though, so that's good news. Akatsuki seem to be mingled into the mix of things here, but I can't figure out how yet. I'm sure that losing Itachi was a pretty big blow and they're sitting back on their heels now, but I wouldn't count them out for too long. They've already snatched up Taki's Jinchuriki. Naruto did his best to follow along, he really did. The mere fact that 2.5 of the 5 major villages hated Konoha's guts just seemed to not sit well with him. His sensei, of course, took it all in stride and relayed the information in an almost nonchalant tone. Almost as if he'd done this before, huh? Weird. And Hinata? Naruto pressed as soon as he was able. Jiraiya visibly darkened and Naruto knew better than to expect good news. I've spent the last year with Kakashi and Anko tracking her down, but I can't seem to pinpoint who has her. We're betting that she's alive, though. If she wasn't there'd be a village sporting at least one successful Byakugan transplant. Naruto's fists clenched and his knuckles whitened. What about her seal? That's probably the only reason she's still alive. Whoever has her is likely taking as much time as they need to try and bypass that seal, and since whoever it is isn't as good as me or you, they'll need a lot of time. They probably shit a brick when they realized she had it, but it's not like they'll get another chance. They won't get much of a chance to do anything after this stunt if it's up to me, Naruto's voice dropped and his eyes reddened. Ever since his merge with Kurama, his emotions had been more intense and easily displayed. Easy, kid. You'll get your mate back, as well as your vengeance. Naruto calmed at the words even as Jiraiya patted his shoulder. Don't worry, kid. We'll get her back before anything drastic happens. And maybe with you back on the force, you can mass out your clones and spread the party. If the Hokage permits it, that is. Yeah, about that. When did Jiji pass off the hat? And why wasn't I called back for it? Naruto asked. Couple of days ago, and it was really a small affair. It usually is during wartime. He stepped down to retire again and Tsunade stepped into the office the same day. I didn't even know until a few days later when we got the hawk. Naruto nodded in understanding and then stood up with his sensei when Tsunade waltzed back into the room, her face a bit flushed and her smile relaxed. She must have won the battle of the bottle. Well, Naruto, she started as she sat down at her desk. What all did you happen to learn on your trip? Jiraiya perked up at this, as it was likely something he had been waiting to ask about for quite some time. Well, I did manage to become a perfect Jinchuriki. Kurama and I are pretty tight. Never say that again or so help me. That's great. Any drawbacks you've noticed? The Hokage asked as she pulled yet another bottle from her desk. When Shizune didn't barge in at the opening of said bottle, Naruto answered. Most notable would be my increased emotions, I think. I can still control them well enough, but they show more easily now. Also, I can hold a perfect cloak for well over an hour, and I'm getting close to 2 the last time I checked. Naruto watched as his Hokage poured herself a saucer of her sake before taking long gulps from the container itself. Good, Jiraiya tried to keep the conversation going while avoiding his teammates' glare. And your sage mode. Naruto brightened at the mention of Senjutsu. I actually think that was my biggest improvement. I can enter sage mode in 3 minutes now and totally on my own. I can last about 20 minutes per charge and I can fit 3 seals on my arm to stock up. To emphasize his point, Naruto pointed out 3 seals on his left forearm. Jiraiya whistled in appreciation. That's pretty good, kid. Anything else you want us to know? Naruto smiled mischievously at the question. Well, I can split a waterfall no problem now, and I've already started on another impossible project. Becoming attractive, less annoying, and/or a productive member of the human race. For some odd reason, Kurama was ignored. Heard, but ignored. Impossible project, eh? Jiraiya leaned forward as Tsunade finished her bottle and tossed it to the trash. Her attention was also on him. Yup. Dad said that the Rasengan was incomplete. Tsunade nodded in what appeared to be polite ignorance of the levity of his statement, but Jiraiya immediately caught on. Tsunade tossed what was left of her sake from the saucer and into her mouth, swishing it around before finally ingesting it. If you're looking for impossible, you did a pretty good job of picking one, the white-haired Sanin mumbled. Before Naruto could elaborate on his progress, the door burst down. Standing where the heavy door used to hang was a stiff-looking Mito guy. Everyone present immediately knew that something was off with the man. Okage-sama, I have urgent news. Sasuke Uchiha has been taken from his clan compound by a large group of sound nin. He fought off and killed several, and a commotion drew in several of his peers as well as myself. I took the initiative and sent out Chunin Neji Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara, and Sakura Haruno. They are leading a team of genin comprised of Choji Akimichi, Kiba Inuzuka, and Tenten Higurashi. I apprehended and captured 3 of the sound operatives that were escaping into the village, but the children had to take pursuit on their own. Tsunade was immediately sobered. The blush was gone, and her soft smile followed it shortly after. In that one instant, she had the look of a hardened veteran, a capable leader, and a Hokage that Naruto could follow. You did well, guy. Have you brought the 3 you captured to T&I already? I nodded once. Yes, although they did have a strange technique which allows them to transform that made keeping them alive difficult. I'm sure Ibiki can handle it, but I would suggest possibly sending him backup. The blonde Kage snapped her fingers once, and a masked Anbu appeared at her side. Without a word, she glanced at the masked nin and nodded. He was gone in an instant. Naruto, I assume that you would like to be involved in the retrieval of your teammate? Tsunade asked rhetorically. Everyone knew the answer to that. Naruto suppressed the rage he was feeling. With your leave, Lady Hokage. Once Naruto got clearance, he dropped a Hirishin kunai into Jiraiya's lap. If I find Orochimaru, I'll come to get you. And then he was gone, even before he received approval from Jiraiya. I was dismissed as part of Ibiki's backup, and the 2 Sanin sat in weary silence. How long had he been back before the shit hit the fan, Tsunade? I'm guessing about 2 hours. That's if he didn't stop for ramen and came straight here. Jiraiya shook his head. He's just a magnet for trouble, that one. I hope he manages to get Sasuke back, because if he fails at that too, I don't think we'll have to worry about Sound or Mist anymore. They won't be on the map. Naruto flashed into a pitch-black area, much to the surprise of 2 others in the same room. In the instant that his jutsu lit the pace up, he would almost suggest that they were in a cave. Sakura. Where are we? I thought you were tracking Sasuke, Naruto asked as he reached a hand out for the wall. Naruto, Sakura, and the other voice yelled in surprise. Oh, Choji, are you in here too? Nice to see you, man. Well, hear you. Naruto, what are you doing back? Sakura asked. I got back a few hours ago, and Guy-sensei interrupted my meeting with our new Hokage to tell her about you guys and Sasuke. So here I am. What's our scenario here? Choji spoke up next. This one guy called Jirobo broke off from his group to hold us off. He's huge, and he has this jutsu that's trapped us in this rock cave thing. I'm pretty sure it's sucking our chakra too. Here, let me get a feel of the wall. I've been working on my sensory abilities, Naruto suggested. He moved to his left with his arms outstretched and reaching, the direction he remembered both the nearest wall and Sakura being. Now, taking into account that it was pitch black and Sakura hadn't said anything in a bit, it was completely understandable how Naruto made the mistake he did. With his hands groping for some semblance of a rock wall, they met something much softer. A pair of somethings, actually. Yeah, they were much softer than rock, and after his first involuntary squeeze, they almost seemed to have a tip or pebble at the front of them. You motherfucker. Sakura's fist somehow squirrely found his jaw in the dark, planting firmly into the side of his face and rocketing him away. Naruto's head then crashed into the opposite rock face, not making a mark despite the speed he had hit it at. What? What happened? Are you guys okay? Why did it sound like Naruto flew into the wall? Choji asked rapidly, his voice filled with worry. Is this part of the sensing technique? It better not be part of the fucking technique, Sakura growled. Naruto lay against the far wall, doing his best to keep his whimpers to himself as he put his jaw back into place and flooded chakra to the area to heal it. I am so proud. The comment was followed by a round of loud laughter. Sakura, by Kami, why don't you just punch the goddamn wall? Naruto moaned once he could use his jaw. The pincat huffed. Tell me where and I will. I have a lot of anger to get rid of now. Naruto gulped audibly as Choji asked again, guys. I still don't know what happened. That's fine, Choji, Naruto immediately responded. Alright, well at least I found a wall. One sec, Naruto placed both hands on the wall and started to feel out the chakra coursing through it. Naruto, Choji started, can't you just make a shadow clone outside of the dome and have it place a Hirshin marker? Already tried, the chakra in the walls is blocking my presence, Naruto answered. After a solid minute, a fed-up Sakura asked, did you find the damn spot yet? I can feel this place sucking my chakra and Choji, and I don't have an infinite amount like you do. Naruto grunted. Yeah, I found a couple. And don't worry about chakra since I can refill your reserves. Naruto dusted off his hands before continuing, Sakura, 3 feet to your right is where the chakra is the strongest, likely where that Jirobo guy is holding the jutsu at. 3 feet to my left is where it's at its weakest, the exact opposite end which makes sense. Now, I can probably use a Rasengan. About fucking time, Naruto heard Sakura cut him off before there was a loud whumph and a crack of light appeared. The entire dome of rock then crumbled in on itself and Naruto could see his teammate's outstretched fist continuing from where the wall was and hitting a large sound shinobi's jaw. He knew that one would hurt. Naruto stood next to Choji, in complete awe of what just happened and totally fine with letting Sakura take this one. Huh? There's 3 of you now. The large man said dumbly as he jumped back and rubbed his jaw. The shinobi was massive, both tall and stout. He may have been a bit round compared to the average shinobi, but the layer of fat likely hid pounds upon pounds of muscle. How did you? I don't care. But since you broke out of my technique, I'll have to kick things up a notch. Sakura was about to charge in again when the black mark started to take over his body. The already ugly man then went through a kind of transformation, one that didn't help his slightly overweight and idiotic look. His skin turned completely red and muscles seemed to bulge a bit before calming. The black receded and Jirobo stood looking smug. Sakura, that's curse mark stuff, do you want help? Naruto asked. Surprisingly, Sakura waved him off. You think you're the only one who can get a power boost? Sakura asked aloud. Toji leaned into Naruto and said, we all loved it when she showed us this. Sakura crossed her arms in a very familiar pose and when she released them Naruto's eyes widened. She had opened the gate of opening. Fuck. Note to self, never upset her again. Sakura flew forward at least twice as fast as the last time Naruto had seen her. Jirobo hurled a massive chunk of the earth at her, the mass of rock and dirt dwarfing the Kunoichi. Sakura didn't even punch through it. She flicked it, and a few of Jiraiya's stories made Naruto rethink her training under Tsunade was good for his health. Through the rubble, the transformed Jirobo showed fear for the first time. This little girl was coming for him and she was stronger than anyone he had seen before. Surprise, bitch. Sakura screamed as her fist made contact with his stomach. The flesh of the sound ninja's stomach offered little resistance to Sakura's fist, allowing it to sink in past her wrist. The shockwave that traveled along his belly fat seemed delayed and the man was frozen in place by pain. His body tried to absorb the chakra present in the girdle and the chakra invading his body, but there was no way he could do so in time. The wave made its way back to his center and finally, the pent-up energy found a place to escape. Out his back. A massive crater was blown through Jirobo's body, the power behind Sakura's punch literally ripping him open. Over half of his back was blown away. Bits of his bloody organs decorated the trees behind him and the shattered pieces of his spine cut into the trunks. Sakura pulled her fist from the tiny hole it had made in the front as Jirobo's skin went back to normal. She shook off what blood she could and then used the shirt of her now dead opponent to finish cleaning her hand. So, Sakura. About what happened earlier. It was a mistake, see, and I'm really sorry, Naruto started as he walked up to his teammate. I'm over it, she cut him off with a sigh. It was dark, so I don't blame you too much. I'm not even going to ask anymore, Choji mumbled. Well, Naruto said both quickly and cheerily, we should get going, someone else might need backup. And the three took off, Naruto scribbling seals onto tags so he could eventually give them back some chakra. Naruto, Sakura, and Choji all sped through the treetops in the direction that the latter two had seen the rest of the team run off in. The corpse of Jirobo lay in a pool of blood behind them, and their friends lay in various states of health or battle ahead of them. The conversation was sparse, and Naruto wasn't prone to banter during active missions as it was. Before too long, however, all three shinobi started to notice massive spiderwebs hanging from the trees. Half a minute later Choji got his leg stuck in one, and the action alerted the trio to the fact that the webs weren't from natural spiders. Guys. I swear I'm strong enough to break out of normal webs, Choji asserted as he tugged against the stout threads. Sakura then tried to pry them apart, and even her super strength couldn't break more than one thread. Maybe if she opened the first gate again, but that would be overkill for such a small task. Looks like one of the enemies fights like a spider the same way Anko fights like a snake, Naruto mumbled. He nudged Sakura to the side and created his preferred chakra claws on his right hand, the wind chakra cutting easily through the web easily. Well Naruto, you have seniority here. What's the plan? Sakura asked as Choji was freed. Naruto then sat down cross-legged before replying. I need 3 minutes to enter Sage mode. After that, I should be able to pinpoint and eliminate whoever is responsible for this. Sakura grabbed a pair of completed chakra tags from Naruto's pocket as he was prepping himself. She handed one to Choji and explained how they worked. After the pair felt rejuvenated, they simply watched Naruto. Gradually they could feel a serene presence around their little group, and Naruto's eyes had an orange stripe run across them. You know, I don't actually think you've shown me this one before, Sakura said absently as Naruto stood back up. I've never had to. Kurama says it's on par with his more powerful cloaks, and the sensing capabilities are almost unmatched. In fact, I've picked up on Neji fighting our spider friend, was Naruto's response. What's the plan, then? Choji asked him. You two wait here with a clone until he pops. My wind chakra and Neji's gentle fist are the only things we have that can probably cut through the webs. Sakura looked like she wanted to protest, but technically Naruto was her senior officer in the situation. That in mind, she simply nodded along with Choji. Naruto flicked a quick two-fingered salute before dashing off at a speed mistakable with a shunshin. He didn't use the actual technique just in case the spider nin was also a sensor, but Sakura surmised he wouldn't need it with his augmented speed. Naruto crouched in the branches of a leafy tree, using both his eyes and his Sage Mode sensory ability to scope out the scene in front of him. Neji had just avoided the massive arrow aimed at his heart by mere inches, allowing the deadly projectile to plunge through his shoulder. Naruto followed the string that was attached to the back end of the arrow, the same string Neji cut and pulled through his shoulder. There, up in the trees and completely hidden by both webs and foliage. A large six-armed man sat holding a bow and yet another arrow aimed at Neji's position. Naruto felt a spike of urgency, and he shot out a sharp tendril of calm at the Spider-Man. He had activated a curse seal of some kind, and Naruto didn't know if Neji could survive another shot. The bow was drawn back, and Neji took off running unsteadily, showing just how many injuries he had taken fighting this Oto Jonin. Naruto managed to get his presence to take hold, and due to its calming nature, it went unnoticed. The clone popped into existence behind the man, but the string was released anyway. Naruto made a split-second decision and decided to trust in Neji's Byakugan to keep him alive, and he swapped places with his clone. Naruto grabbed the bun of the spider-like nin and pulled him down onto the branch, straddling his waist as he did so. Naruto saw the maniacal glee leave the man's eyes as they bore into Naruto's furious, striped orange ones. A Rasengan appeared before getting slammed down onto the shinobi's chest, tearing through hard yellow substance used for the bow and arrows like it was tissue paper. Once the protective shell was gone, Naruto felt the all-too-familiar grind of chakra against bone, and then the spread eagle man's sternum gave way to the purely destructive nature of the jutsu. Shards of bone cut into Naruto's cheek, small cuts that were almost instantly healed. Blood flew up around Naruto's arm and hit him in the face like a hot demonic onslaught of raindrops. The sound nin screamed loudly, and once Naruto got his hand into his chest cavity, he ended the poor being's suffering. A quick upward twist of his wrist obliterated the heart of Neji's attacker. Naruto pulled his hand free and took a page from Sakura's book, cleaning the weapon of destruction on the man's clothing. Your claws would have been cleaner, you know. This one is obviously one of Orochimaru's elites. I had to be sure. Fair enough. I'd help Neji if I were you. Naruto's head spun, and the scene that met him was disheartening, to say the least. Neji dangled a good few inches off the ground, the last arrow of the Spider-Man impaling him to a rock. Considering that the path of the arrow had blown through several trees before it had found its mark meant that Neji was unlucky in not receiving another clean pass. Instead, all the Hyuga could do was jump and hope that the arrow passed underneath his most vital organs. Naruto raced to Neji's side and placed a splintered piece of a log under his feet, doing his best to relieve what must have been unbearable pain. Neji? "Neji, are you with me?" Naruto asked frantically. "Naruto? It's good that you're here, the others will need help," Neji whispered. All of his strength was gone and the light was slowly leaving his pale eyes. "No, no, no, you bastard, you aren't allowed to die yet." Naruto transferred one of his 4 spare chakra tattoos directly onto Neji's head, not healing him at all, but buying him a few more precious minutes of life. The clone appeared before immediately popping. Naruto pulled out a Hirshin kunai but was interrupted by Neji. "Naruto, it's no use. I'd need Tsunade, Shizune or Sakura here to save me, and judging by the stories I don't think I'd survive you Hirshining me home. I just wanted to tell you were right. About Hinata and my stupid fate deal. I talked with my uncle and I just want to ask for your forgiveness. Before I join my father." Naruto blew air through his nose in exasperation. "He must have given you a concussion, too. Of course I forgive you, Dumbus, but you sure as hell aren't gonna die here. There's more than one way to get you healed." Naruto slammed the kunai into the dirt and the clone he had left with Sakura and Choji appeared with both of them in tow. Now, since it was Sakura and Choji's first time traveling via Hirshin, they had less than spectacular responses to warping through space and time. Sakura dry heaved off to the side, gagging almost violently. Choji, whose stomach was almost always full, ran off to the bushes to throw up whatever he had inside of him. "What the hell, Naruto? I haven't seen you in a year and you do all this stupid shit to me?" Sakura complained, wiping down her mouth. Sakura, Neji whispered in immense pain. There may have even been a bit of hope mingled in that tone, but it was definitely almost all pain. Sakura whipped her head around and went into a full-on medic mode when she saw the damage. "Naruto, be ready to catch him. I have to bust the rock to free the arrow," she ordered. Naruto knew that field ranks held no bearing in emergency medical situations like this, and the medic was always given the lead. Naruto created a dozen clones to search for the remaining groups and provide what help they could. He then moved over to a nearly unconscious Neji as Sakura placed a hand on the boulder behind him. The light tapped from her knuckles and the large rock crumbled, freeing the arrow and allowing Neji to fall limply into Naruto's waiting arms. There was no preamble as Sakura motioned for him to place the Hyuga on his side. "Okay, now I need you to cut the arrow off in the back as close to his skin as possible. After that, start pulling it out slowly and as straight as possible while I heal what I can on its way out. That should keep him from losing too much more blood," Sakura ordered even as she began to work on closing Neji's other various wounds. Most of his serious injuries were located on his back, with several wounds looking much the same as one another. Likely the odd kunai that littered the clearing. Naruto's chakra claws made short work of the arrow, and the 6 inches protruding from the middle of Neji's back fell to the dirt. Getting a nod from Sakura, Naruto slowly began to pull the arrow out the way it went in. Sakura's hands glowed brightly as she did her work, and no blood left the exit wound as she promised. When the end of the arrow left the front of Neji's body, it was accompanied by a rank smell and a small spurt of blood. Sakura's hand was there immediately to both stem the flow and close the surface of the wound. Now that Neji wasn't at risk of externally bleeding out, Sakura laid him on his back. He was still unconscious, and Naruto was glad that the Hyuga was afforded that small comfort. He had taken a lot of damage and deserved the break from the pain. "I just have to focus on healing what organs I can in the field. I should be able to stabilize his lungs, but that arrow took out a fair amount of his small intestine. At best I can stop the internal bleeding, but he has to get to the hospital for real treatment," Sakura told him. That was Naruto's cue to take back over. "Okay. I'll leave 3 clones to carry him and escort Choji back. Choji, I need you to give a report on what's happened so far to the Hokage." Choji held up a thumbs up from his spot halfway into a bush. He'd be good to go by the time Sakura was done with Neji. "Probably. Sakura, be on standby for another clone to Hirshin you to wherever you're needed. That may be for either healing or combat, so be prepared for anything." Sakura scowled lightly as she worked. "Ugh, we need to practice with you flashing us around everywhere. That first time sucked. Also, leave me another tag if you can, this is going to drain me." Naruto did as he was asked, transferring one of his tattoos onto a ceiling tag for his teammate. With that, Naruto took off in the direction of some of the clones that had popped. They had found Kiba and had been taken out in the ensuing fight with someone named Seiken. Or Yukin. The memories were pretty erratic. Kiba spun to a hasty stop, his passing fang having ripped up the earth beneath him. His technique had gotten much stronger, and with Akamaru's new size he was hitting harder as well. On the downside, they were fighting even numbers although they had expected to be fighting just one sound jonin. This guy had some crazy ability to split off into 2 different people and they were keeping him and Akamaru pretty busy. Naruto's clones had appeared and tried to help, but the 2 Odo shinobi, or one, were too slippery to get caught. They phased in and out of each other to both avoid and attack the clones, leaving them useless other than to alert the original Naruto of the location. "Come on, Naruto, where are you?" Kiba took a hard blow to the shoulder, one that sent him spinning through the air. Luckily he was quite used to spinning, and when he caught the transformed Akamaru's eye, they both went into fang passing fang. The Seiken Yukin duo smirked when they saw the twin destructive twisters barreling their way, the swerving and switching patterns of the Inuzuka and his hound destroying anything in its path. Splitting at the last moment, the brothers took off in opposite directions. Kiba and Akamaru split up on a silent signal, Kiba going in after Seiken to the left. The revolting technique of the Odo man saved him once more when he phased backward into a tree, tempting Kiba to plow into it and send its splinters flying everywhere. He did so, and the destruction was honestly magnificent to behold, but Kiba had played almost directly into Seiken's hands. Seiken shot out of the ground, kunai at the ready, and did his best to skewer Kiba as he spun past. All he got for his trouble was a badly damaged kunai and torn up hand. Kiba's strength would make a one-on-one fight tough, so Seiken had to rely on Yukin to take out the puppy. Well, Kiba started as he reoriented himself, I guess we get to see who has the better teamwork. And Inuzuka and his Ninken are a pair of fucked up brothers. Seiken smiled gleefully. Silly boy, I am one of Odo's elite. I don't need my brother to kill you. Of the five, my brother and I are the most versatile, and it would be a cold day in hell before we lost to some genin and his mutt. Kiba knew he couldn't hope to kill both of these guys. He was buying time, at best. At worst, he'd shoot for a Pyrrhic victory and hope his mother would understand. Why are you guys even doing this? What do you want with Sasuke? Kiba asked as he readied a kunai. Seiken perked his ears up and tilted his head to the side and then was joined by his brother. Kiba had a horrible feeling in his gut and he looked behind the two jonin. Laying on his side, beaten, broken and quite possibly dead, was Akamaru. Two of his legs were snapped at reverse angles of their norm and his spine looked like it was in two pieces. That could just be his fur, Kiba hoped it was. There would be no real comeback from an injury like that. Yukin answered Kiba because he's part of our orders. Lord Orochimaru wants him, so Lord Orochimaru will get him. And you, little boy, are simply in the way. Kiba soared. His partner was he'd be okay. Kiba just had to end the fight and get Akamaru back to the clan. Maybe Kiba's sister could do something. At the moment though, he had to contend with the speeding brothers moving in to flank him. They ran at Kiba with twin kunai drawn, sprinting directly at the Inuzuka from either side. Kiba knew he couldn't overpower them both and they were faster than he was. He'd have to think. Kiba launched himself forward at a tree trunk at the last minute possible before flipping around charging at the spot he was once at with a passing fang, hoping to hit them both. Unfortunately, the brothers simply phased through each other and thrust out both a kunai and a foot each. Kiba's spin was interrupted and twin gashes appeared along his sides. Painful, but far from lethal. When will you learn, little boy? Seiken drawled as he and his brother sauntered closer. Yukin continued as Kiba backed away on the ground, snarling like a cornered animal, your little tricks are powerless here. Nothing you do can stop us. We're just better than you. Kiba found himself with his back against a tree and the brothers no more than 10 feet in front of him and steadily getting closer. Kiba gave one last look to Akamaru, taking solace that he'd die in battle with his best friend before fingering one of his last kunai. There was a pause and everything in the forest seemed to freeze. Birds and insects seemed to vanish, the air dropped in temperature, and everyone present felt the same, horrifying feeling. Well, Kiba was relieved at least. Naruto's power flooded through the woods, the cold, bitter fingers of hopelessness wrapped themselves around Seiken and Yukin's hearts. Kiba dropped his weapon and simply tried to relax. He was losing a bit more blood than he would like. Naruto walked out of the shadows of the trees, his hair being one of the only things visible until he was close enough to hear. When will you Odo trash learn? I've already killed your resident spider freak and watched my teammate blow out your fat ogre's spine. We're just better than you. Naruto's voice was low, calm, and smooth with confidence. Added to the feeling of pure power he was exuding, and Kiba would believe any claims he made. Hopefully, the brothers would do the same. Uzumaki. Or is it Namikaze now? Seiken taunted. We were wondering if you'd show your cowardly face. Word has it you've been hiding for almost a year now. Naruto's face remained completely passive and his body looked totally relaxed. Faster than anyone could follow, Naruto had a hand lazily outstretched toward Seiken and the horrified twin had a long, shallow cut along the right side of his neck. Centimeters from actually killing him. Keep in mind you're alive because I feel like talking, Naruto added calmly. Why are you after Sasuke? Yukin responded this time, we already told your mud of a friend here that was Orochimaru once he gets, alright. Naruto looked at Kiba and Akamaru and he felt a twinge of guilt at taking so long to find him. A genin shouldn't have to deal with this kind of thing, war or not. Kiba, take Akamaru and follow this clone to Sakura. She'll patch you up enough to get him home to your clan vet. A clone appeared next to the downed pup and brought him immediately to Kiba. Kiba shakily stood and accepted his injured friend before walking after the clone as fast as he could manage. And what makes you think we're letting any of you leave these woods alive? Seiken asked with bluster back in his voice. Naruto sighed in apparent annoyance before disappearing from sight. Suddenly, a pair of Narutos were behind each of the twins and a sharp kick broke the outside leg of each brother. Their yells of pain were drowned out by the sick snap of their kneecaps and then Naruto was back where he started. You two make it very hard to keep you alive. You're lucky I'm here and not Anko. She wouldn't even ask the question first, she'd start off by waterboarding one of you with your brother's blood. At that morbid thought, Yukin gave in. Fine. What do you want to know? Seiken hissed at him but didn't protest. Naruto asked again, what does Orochimaru want with Sasuke? Lord Orochimaru has wanted a set of Sharingan for a long time and right now he's hunting for a new host body. Naruto followed up with, how many of you are left and who has Sasuke? Yukin hesitated to answer and Seiken smiled triumphantly. At least he did until Naruto's knee was burying his face into the ground. I only need you alive since you're the one talking. Your brother is just collateral to me at this point. Wait. Yukin screamed just before Naruto plunged his chakra claws into Seiken's chest. Sasuke and that Jonin killed almost everyone except the Sound 5. The four of us were heading to meet up with our leader at the meadow in these woods and we left Aiya with Sasuke to hide him in the field as she fought off whoever followed her. The Sound 5, who all is included and what is its purpose? Yukin swallowed heavily. Seiken and myself, Taiya, Jirobo and Kimimaro are the original Sound 4. Kimimaro is our newest and strongest member, he's the one waiting in the field. We're the hand of Lord Orochimaru, his bodyguards and elite soldiers. What he wants done we get done. Naruto didn't lift his knee from Seiken's face as he contemplated the new information. You're more like servants to him than elite fighters. I fought stronger Sound Nin during the invasion, well I assume you all held up that barrier. And it looks like Taiya and your leader are the only ones left alive. I'll have to tell Shikamaru and Tenten to capture her. Yukin had a confused look on his face, but it was soon wiped clean as a clone buried a kunai into his neck. Seiken's fate followed shortly after and Naruto stood to get to the field. A clone would have to find Shikamaru. Shikamaru had figured out Taiya's game long ago and with Tenten's expertise in weaponry, things shouldn't be too difficult to kill her. Her massive summons would be a threat but as long as his shadow or one of Tenten's many blades could reach her, it should be over fairly quickly. Hey, fuckheads. Even if you kill me, there are people in my group that could still kick your ass. Taiya's hidden voice called out. Ah, Shikamaru and Tenten also had to find her. And you think we're the strongest of our own group? Shikamaru asked aloud, trying to keep her talking while Tenten searched the shadows. That Hyuga kid. Ha. He likes Taijutsu, and Kimimaro would tear him a new asshole in Taijutsu if he managed to get by Kidomaru. Or are you talking about that pink bitch? I'm still not even sure how she made Chunin she look so damn weak. There was a wave of familiar power that swept over the woods, freezing everyone in place. When it lifted, Shikamaru couldn't help but smile. You know who that was, right? There was no response that time. She knew damn well who it was one of the only people that age she was ordered not to engage alone. Another minute of avoiding the three large Doki and Shikamaru was getting frustrated. Tenten should have found her by now or at the very least flushed her out of her hiding place. All of a sudden, Naruto ran into the clearing, cutting one of the ghost-like Doki in half with a stream of his breath. Shikamaru. How you doing? Naruto asked cheerfully. Naruto. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be tracking Sasuke? The shadow user asked. Naruto flapped a hand nonchalantly. I'm just a clone. The real me knows exactly where to go, but I had to activate Sage Mode to track you down quickly. Oh, hi Tenten, Naruto didn't wave in order to allow her to remain hidden. I'm just here to tell you that the boss said to capture Taiya alive since everyone else except their leader is dead. She's up there, Naruto pointed behind without looking. Shikamaru only nodded in appreciation. Yup, with Naruto back, things were bound to get interesting. And very, very troublesome. Naruto bolted onto the field that he knew Sasuke to be hidden at. At most he had expected a fight with this leader that Yukin had talked about, but the field was a bit more populated than he had expected. Lee was jumping around, throwing his deadly kicks at a shinobi who seemed to fight with his own bones. If that wasn't freaky enough, Lee had the third gate open and his shots weren't doing too much to the mystery shinobi. Naruto stood in appreciation for a hot second, it was rare to see two masters of Taijutsu fight all out against each other. Lee had access to the gates, but the Sound Nin, presumably Kimimaro, had a cursed seal activated. Lee's head was never in one place, always weaving to avoid lightning-fast jabs of a bone sword Naruto knew even he would find challenging. The same could be said for Lee's opponent. Even if Lee didn't have anything strong enough to kill him, the blows that did land were still obviously very painful. Kimimaro weaved just as much as Lee did, and Naruto marveled at the constant motion. Before Naruto could intervene, Lee was blasted away by what appeared to be a hail of ribs, sharp enough to pierce him and pin him to the ground. Naruto figured he should probably step in. Hey Lee, you look like you could use a hand, Naruto called out, getting the attention of both fighters. More konoha trash. How many more of you are there? The pale, stoic man asked flatly. It was hard to tell if he was taunting them or was genuinely curious. "Friend Naruto." Lee shouted before blasting up from the ground, leaving the bones protruding from the dirt after ripping the rest of the way through his body. "It is good to seeing you." "Oh, gods." Lee got drunk. "And he has the gates open. Should we run?" All at once the fight seemed to catch up with Lee and he fell to his knees as the drunken blush left his face. The energy from the gates dissipated and he knelt still, simply trying to breathe through the holes in his chest. And back and stomach and sides. "Nah, we're fine." Naruto held up an old familiar cross sign, the shortcut for his mass shadow clone jutsu. In the blink of an eye the field was littered with 100 clones. Enough to pose a threat by sheer numbers, but not enough to the point of chaos ruining any plans made on the fly. "Adding trash to a pile only allows the blaze to burn brighter," was the calm response of the bone user. As the clones started to keep Kimimaro busy, Naruto had one dispel to bring Sakura to the location. The clone left with her dispelled upon completion of the Hirshin, leaving Naruto with a gagging Sakura and heavily bleeding Lee. "Who is it this time?" Sakura asked once she got her gag reflex under control. Naruto simply pointed to Lee and she got down to work as her teammate transferred his second to last store of chakra to another tag. The last one was probably for Sasuke. "I'll also need you to distract the bone guy. My clones are fighting once Lee can run back to Konoha. I'll free Sasuke while you do." "No. I can still fight." Lee interrupted himself by choking a little bit on his own blood. "I'm the medic, I'll make the call, Lee." Sakura's tone left no room for arguments and Lee looked more than a little crestfallen. "Look at it this way, Lee," Naruto started to reassure the green-clad boy as he walked to the forest edge. "You're just giving Sasuke, Sakura and I our first battle as a team in a whole year. There's gotta be something youthful about that." Naruto sped off before he could be bombarded with the shouts of the dreaded Y-word, as well as Sakura's curses for setting Lee off on a tangent. Naruto found Sasuke's odd prison within 2 minutes, enough time for Lee to start his escape and Sakura to absorb the chakra from the tag. Unfortunately, Kimimaro was down to the last dozen clones, all 12 of which had now resorted to using ninjutsu instead of just their fists. They couldn't risk it earlier without taking out some of the other clones. The biggest thing holding Sasuke out of the waking world was some kind of barrel. It was easily the oddest prison Naruto had ever seen, but definitely one he could break his friend out of. It was guarded by few ninjutsu, after all. Naruto took one look at the tag on the outside of the barrel and he noticed it was a relatively simple dark sealing method. It was sloppy as well and it left several gaps in the kanji for his chakra to seep into and break. "Release," Naruto muttered, not even bothering with a half-hand seal. Too easy. The paper slip fell and immediately sounds originated from within the barrel. The barrel itself was sealed with a multi-member level seal, something that would take at least as many members to infiltrate at the same time. Which would pose a real problem for most. "Release," Naruto and 3 clones muttered, freeing the barrel of the restrictive lock. The clones all popped, leaving Naruto alone with his bewildered final teammate. Sasuke launched the top of the barrel off before stretching violently. He was ready to fight for his life despite how tired and ragged he seemed. "How the hell did these idiots capture you?" Naruto asked with an amused smile. Sasuke spun to face the blonde, eyes wide and surprisingly devoid of his dijutsu. "Naruto. When did you get back? How long have I been trapped?" Naruto placed a hand on Sasuke's shoulder and started to transfer the chakra seal directly from his arm. "I dunno, maybe an hour. Guy-sensei busted down the Hokage's door to tell her about your capture and I happened to be there." "How did it happen again?" Naruto's tone was almost teasing and it annoyed Sasuke to no end. "I had just finished my 5th hour of training and was out of chakra. I don't know how they got into the village, either. They must have 'em all." That actually worried Naruto. "I managed to kill a good 6 of them and then Guy showed up to kill off a few more before they got me and he had to chase some into the village. Itachi's gonna be pissed about all the blood in the training yard anyways. They managed to pin me, shove some weird pill down my throat and lock me in that damn box. 4 of them seemed like they were in charge, but I could have killed them all if they hadn't caught me with my pants down." Naruto believed him. He could feel that the one seal wasn't enough to refill Sasuke's reserves entirely and he would need a second one to top him off. Sakura could probably handle herself for another minute while he scribbled the seal onto his arm. "Is Sakura safe?" Sasuke asked. "She's out kicking the leader's ass. Wanna watch?" Naruto turned and let Sasuke get a view of his girlfriend in action. Naruto would only need about 30 seconds to fill up the seal and Sakura would make great entertainment while the boys waited. She was charging in right along with the clones, much to Kimimaro's annoyance. In fact, the first punch he saw coming he simply rolled his eyes and allowed her to cock her arm back. However, when her fist shot forward almost as fast as Lee's he realized his mistake. He realized this even more so when her punch landed and sent him rocketing away with a dislocated jaw. It had been a long time since someone had hit him that hard. Naruto whistled, she sure has started to pack some power behind her punches. Sasuke nodded in agreement. Yeah, just wait until she asks to spar with you. I can't even block her hits anymore or we have to call it a day. You won't believe how hard she actually hits now. Naruto had a small flashback to a dark, painful, and very embarrassing cave. I got a pretty good idea. Sasuke felt the second hasty seal of chakra flood into him and he felt his reserves fill almost all the way back up. Well, we can't let her have all the fun. I take it no one brought my sword. Naruto dusted his hands as he shook his head. Sorry, you'll have to do without. Sasuke's eyes flashed red before swirling into the exotic pattern of his eternal Mangekyo. I have no problem with that. And the two disappeared from normal view, speeding away to help out their third teammate. Kimimaro sat up from the grassy crater his body made after receiving that single punch. That seriously could have killed him if his bones weren't strengthened from the level 1 curse mark. He allowed his eyes to unfocus as his jaw reset itself through a series of sickening cracks. When they focused on his opponent again, there were 3 instead of just 1. The pink bitch, the loud clone user, and his target. How unfortunate. How are you feeling, Sasuke? Sakura asked as she cracked the knuckles of her hand. Sasuke grunted, making Naruto smile. Some things never did change. I've been better. I've been worse. Naruto spoke next, eyeing Kimimaro as he stood up across from the trio. So, Sakura, exactly how strong is this guy? Sakura shrugged, he's pretty tough, but nothing the 3 of us can't handle. I hit him the hardest I could without opening any of the gates. Sasuke rounded on her, opening any of the what? Surprise, babe. Sakura's smile was both demure and mischievous. You konoha trash have delayed me for far too long, as well as setting back the progression of Sasuke's curse seal. My master will not be pleased. Naruto laughed out loud, replying with, did Sasuke forget to tell you that he doesn't have a mark anymore? I removed it like half an hour after he got it. Kimimaro would have gotten paler if he could have. Stop talking Naruto, I want to go home and clean up the mess before Itachi comes home from his mission, Sasuke groaned before narrowing his eyes at the sound elite. Naruto nodded, fired off a tendril of malice to freeze the bone user, and had a clone slam a full power Rasengan into his back. The attack hit flush, and Kimimaro was thrown face first into the dirt as the jutsu drilled into his spine. Oddly enough, the ball of violently rotating chakra didn't progress past the bone, and the chips that went flying told Naruto that the trick should have worked. A rib shot out and dispelled the clone, ending the attack. The fuck? Naruto asked as Kimimaro stood up calmly. That should not happen. Don't worry about it, Sasuke muttered. Amaterasu. The bony opponent was engulfed in black flames that devoured everything it touched without fail. Unfortunately, the screams only lasted for a split second, as did the flailing associated with being burned alive by fire straight from hell. Kimimaro molted. He looked like a sick crab walking forward out of an old exoskeleton, the suit of pure bone burning to ash around him. The fuck? Sasuke asked in a comic mirroring of Naruto. Sakura bent over, picked up a small pebble, and hurled it with all her strength. Kimimaro looked actually bored as he deflected the tiny projectile with a bony protrusion on his hand. The fuck? Sakura's version didn't fit quite as well, and her teammates looked at her in confusion. She didn't actually expect that to work, did she? Kurama's voice was almost concerned. For the sake of all of our lives in the future, I sure as hell hope not. She's not nearly that useless. Upon seeing the worried expressions of the boys, Sakura simply shrugged and said, what? Shizune says comedy works best in threes. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and gazed up into the heavens for answers. Sasuke only sighed and muttered, you're lucky you're cute. Kimimaro, who heard nothing of the conversation, spoke up next. I see you are truly garbage set aside from the rest of your village. I understand now that I will have to take you more seriously. The trademark black marks adorned his body then, ascending the power and influence of the curse mark to its level 2 state. Kimimaro shifted from his somewhat normal appearance to a darker colored twisted bone monstrosity. He maintained basic anatomy, but extra bone jutted out from places that there should be no bones, and he pulled bones from himself to use as weapons. Behold the power Lord Orochimaru has bestowed upon me. Behold the bringer of your death, see me and fall to despair as you will fall to the bone of my blades. Naruto scratched his head at the loud proclamation. You know, that could have been really bad as if it was just one of us facing him. Sasuke nodded as if to agree. You think you're the only one here with transformations or power-ups? Taking that as a signal, Sakura opened the first gate. Sasuke followed her lead and manifested the ethereal skeletal head of his Susanoo. In between the two of them, Naruto called upon Kurama's perfect cloak, wreathing himself in the golden shroud of pure power. I'm liking the gold, Naruto. Really suits you, Sakura complimented. As she finished, the four took off from their respective positions, meeting in the middle of the one serene meadow to clash. Kimimaro was hard-pressed to stay alive. Very, very hard-pressed. These three fought together better than the Sound Four did, and these three were infinitely more powerful. Sakura had hit him extremely hard in the side, shattering several of his ribs. As he was flying through the air, Naruto had sliced at him with manifested claws of chakra, destroying the protective layer of bone on the arm he used to block. Just as his ribs were replaced, Sasuke slammed a Chidori into his chest while protecting his own body with parts of some massive ghost skeleton. These teenagers had no idea how to give him a breather. That's not to say Kimimaro didn't do his best to give as good as he got. Naruto and Sasuke took most of the blows, using their bodies to protect their teammate from his deadly bones. His spine was in one hand in the form as a whip and a sharpened humerus was in the other as a sick type of sword. The sword had the best chances of slipping between the Susanu's ribs, while the whip could temporarily immobilize the Jinchuriki. The four fought in a blur of speed and power, chunks of the earth flying whenever Sakura landed one of her punches. Blinding light appeared every time Sasuke tried Chidori, not willing to use a fire jutsu with his team so close to the target. 9 powerful glowing hands claws would whip around Naruto, destroying anything they slammed into, while avoiding both Sasuke and Sakura. By this point, Sakura had released 100 healing seal on her forehead, covering her face in markings, and opened the second gate without fear of injury. She was taking just as many slices and whip strikes as her teammates now, but no matter what they hit this bony fucker with he wouldn't seem to die. Suddenly, the blade slipped through Susanu's ribs, and the whip cut too deeply into Naruto's calf for them to escape. The 3 members of Team 7 locked eyes and passed a silent signal. The depths of their team's connection was difficult to understand, but in rare moments like these, they doubted they'd find a closer-knit team. Sasuke slammed one of his modified Chidori strikes into the crook of Kimimaro's left elbow. The blow sent electricity coursing through the Odonin and stunned the left side of his body. At the same time, Naruto lashed out with a massive burst of cutting wind chakra, the most any of those involved had ever seen. The bone whip held up incredibly well considering the breath of air left a deep clean cut into the dirt and rock dozens of feet deep. In the end, it snapped in half and released Naruto's leg. Now freed, Naruto sped forward and threw the strongest Rasengan he could manage directly at the throat of Kimimaro, the least protected target, at the same time Sasuke's Chidori landed. Seeing her opening, Sakura drew her fist back into the same powerful punch that blasted a hole through Jirobo. In a split second, her knuckles shattered against the bone of Kimimaro's stomach before instantaneously healing themselves. They did their intended damage, though, and the energy dispersed into Kimimaro. The impact knocked him to the far side of the field, leaving the 3 members of Team 7 sweating with both their exertion and hesitation to continue the fight. He should very well already be dead. To their dismay, the Odo shinobi slowly and shakily rose from the dirt. The beautiful, grassy meadow they were once at was no longer grassy at all. Rocks and dirt were strewn about from the battle, and it wasn't over yet. How much more do we have to hit this guy with? Naruto asked in awe. This was easily the most resilient opponent he had ever faced. Kimimaro was about to respond with some derogatory phrase, but the only thing to spew from his mouth was dark blood. Upon closer inspection, one could see the damage that would do in the bone user. His throat was absolutely ravaged, flaps of skin and flesh flapping in the light wind. A layer of bone closed off his throat from the elements. His upper left side was hanging limp, most of the nerves completely fried from the extreme voltage pumped into him. The biggest issue, though, was that the energy and power from Sakura's punch had nowhere to escape. It couldn't fire out his back like with Jirobo, and this time she had an extra gate open. All of that raw power transitioning straight into his organs. The world was fading for Orochimaru's second choice of body. There was always one move he could use upon death, and by kami would he take these brats with him. He fell into a chasm of his own making, using the very last of his strength to complete his ultimate technique. Dance of the Fern. Above ground, the 3 members of Team 7 stood ready for him to emerge anywhere, but all were startled when they felt a small rumble. Sakura, however, smiled and told the boys, "You guys are gonna wanna jump for this." Knowing what she was capable of and caring for their personal health, Naruto and Sasuke obeyed, jumping as high as they could. Sakura, still under the effects of the 100 healing technique, opened the third gate. It was something she had just started to work on and was nowhere near ready for use without the seal active, but the single minute of power she gained from it would be all she needed. With her arms stretched up and in a hammer fist-like position, both boys heard her yell of, "Gate of Healing. Open." As her hands descended. Just as the burst of power erupted from her, the meadow began to burst into towering blades of bone. The bones started in the last place Kimimaro was seen, but would fill the meadow in less than a few seconds. Sakura's fists met the hard ground a split second before she was overtaken. The shockwave was almost unbelievable. The ground immediately cratered beneath her, and she was suddenly staring at the lip of the depression at eye level. The power that spread like a ring around her flattened both earth and bone, a 50-foot circle of sunken dirt around her, surrounded by cracked bones that withstood the blast. Shards of the white material littered the ground around her. Sasuke and Naruto were sent careening even higher from the explosion. Although neither would admit it, they both screamed more than a little. Eventually, Naruto grabbed hold of Sasuke's arm and used Hirishin on the kunai with Sakura, bringing the boy safely to the ground. Sakura's aura of power vanished and she fell to her knees exhausted. Sasuke remained in the dirt crater, gagging from his first Hirishin and doing his best to maintain his lunch. Naruto looked at Sakura with more than a little irritation added to his satisfaction. A little warning next time, maybe? He asked her. Hey, she panted and then laid down, it worked didn't it? Naruto simply scoffed. Since he was the only one left that was fighting fit, he absorbed one of his Senjutsu seals, entering Sage mode to try and feel out if Kimimaro was still alive. I don't feel him, guys. I think we did it, Naruto smiled. Before he could celebrate, however, he was forced to add, hang on. I'm picking up on someone I really shouldn't be right now. His teammates looked up from the dirt in worry. Very good, Naruto. I'm quite pleased with your progress, an oily voice called out from the top of one of the splintered bone spires. Great, the fucking pedophile is here, Naruto spat, motioning to his teammates to stay down. You're still convinced about that, are you? It won't matter too much once you're dead, or better yet on my side. Naruto, let us help you, Sasuke asked lowly. It's okay guys. I feel someone else too, someone I'm more than happy to see right now. Naruto assured everyone. His team relaxed into the dirt while the present Sannin quirked an eyebrow. And who would that be, little Naruto? It's been a long time since I've been followed without my knowledge. The crow flapped onto another one spire. TSK, you've made many mistakes, Orochimaru. The Sannin looked nervous for a split second. Itachi, his face returned to the smirk it was seemingly fixed on. It's been a long while. Sasuke stirred from his position in the dirt. Guys, this was Itachi's mission. Find and trail Orochimaru. I had no idea. I have to get home now. Why? Sakura asked lowly. I have to clean up before he returns from the mission or I'll get my ass kicked. He then went ignored. Why, whatever do you mean Itachi? Orochimaru asked. The crow hopped to look directly at the Sannin. You went after my baby brother. That's fucking adorable, Naruto muttered under his breath. Fuck off, was Sasuke's response. Orochimaru laughed in the face of the crow. Silly Itachi. Did you think I wouldn't improve myself after our last encounter? Snake eyes see more than just light and colors. Jinjutsu won't work on me anymore. The crow made a barking sound, almost mistakable for a bird's version of a laugh. Silly Orochimaru. You're in a Jinjutsu right now. Holy fuck he's right. He's good. That was high praise coming from Kurama. Orochimaru scowled before breaking the surrounding Jinjutsu, freeing everyone in it. They were all in their respective positions, but the crow was gone and Orochimaru was slumped on the ground. The Sannin sprung to his feet in anger. Perfect. Naruto yelled out, getting everyone's attention. I'm still Ice Sage mode, and I've wanted to try this out ever since I got it. Oh, hell yes. Naruto sped through the summoning signs, one of the Senjutsu seals traveling to the large array on his back. Naruto slammed his hand down, a massive cloud of smoke rising as a deep powerful roar split the air. Kurama stood protectively over an awestruck Sasuke and Sakura, with Naruto standing firmly on his head. All 9 of his powerful tails swished through the air behind him, knocking down towers of bone as if they were made of cardboard. He was the picture of power at its peak. Orochimaru looked once at the towering Kurama and then to the rapidly emerging Itachi. Then back to Kurama. Well, I seem to have forgotten to turn off my lights at home. I'll see you all later. And the snake was gone, having swan dove into the ground and melding away before Itachi could act. Kurama was more than a bit disappointed. Wow. What a fucking pussy. Sasuke beat everyone back to the village by almost a full 20 minutes, leaving his teammates no warning about his rapid departure. If Itachi had been listening in on any of the conversations, which was very well possible since it's Itachi freaking Uchiha, then he would already know of the situation at home. As it was, Itachi was going to try and track down his target before heading back to report, so Naruto figured Sasuke would have some time. Naruto had to check in with Tsunade before he could head home, and seeing the girls and Zabuza was something he was really looking forward to. Sakura walked along with Naruto on their trip home, enjoying the company that had been missing from the village for a year. He seemed more at ease now. Like he was almost detached from everything, yet still invested completely in the world around him. It made no sense, but Sakura got the feeling that he had grown more in a year away than he would have in 5 years in the village. Naruto was content simply walking with Sakura. She had several stories about her and Sasuke, some of them making him laugh aloud. She told him of the fun she has at the girls' nights Karen and Haku have every Sunday. There were even a few stories of how Itachi would watch her and Sasuke like a protective mother whenever the elder Uchiha was home and not training. Overall it was as if nothing but time had changed between the two. Naruto was also taller than her now, but that was forgotten pretty quickly once the conversation turned to her training. The stories she had about that particular subject were pretty vast. The hour-and-a-half long stroll was filled mainly by Sakura's complaints of how ridiculous her tasks usually were. She had picked up a side job at the hospital to combine with her medical training, and she insisted that both of them combined were nothing compared to the demands both Guy-sensei and Lee made of her. Naruto understood that statement wholeheartedly. Those two green freaks were crazy when it came to training. Before Sakura could get around to asking Naruto of his own training and time away, the village gates came into view. Naruto had to promise that they could all get together soon and have a real conversation over the past year, maybe over dinner or something. With that reassurance, the two parted ways at the gates. Naruto to get to the Hokage and Sakura to get home and tell her parents she was fine. Naruto was told by Shizune to wait in one of the chairs for Tsunade to return. Apparently, she had gone to see Taiya herself and was just now getting back to the office. Naruto couldn't help but wince at the fate of the girl. Tsunade could be scary. Why do I have the urge to smack you right now? The woman in Naruto's thoughts asked as she entered. Naruto laughed nervously. Haha, no reason probably. I did well enough for an on-the-fly mission, so why hospitalize me, right? Tsunade sighed as she sat down. She looked fed up with everything that had happened and Naruto honestly didn't blame her. It went exceptionally well considering the circumstances. We just have to figure out how to get Taiya to talk and all should be well enough. No one was hurt too seriously, although Neji and Akamaru had some close calls. They're set for full recoveries. Naruto visibly relaxed when he heard that. How would I go about recommending people for field promotions? Naruto asked suddenly. Give me their name and your reasoning and I'll add it to the listings. They'll need another officer's recommendation before I consider it though. Kiba Izunuka. His teamwork and strategy with his Ninken helped him hold off a pair of Jonin. His partner received injuries near the end of the fight, but they were successful in delaying and getting information from the enemy before my arrival. Tenten Higurashi. She showed exceptional stealth and tracking skills for the short amount of time I was able to sense her, and clone memories of her show her adding valuable input into solid strategies and reliably completing her own parts of any given plan. Tsunade nodded as she scribbled down the names. Is that all? She asked once. Naruto nodded but jumped a bit when Itachi walked in the now repaired door. Lady Hokage, I second both of those recommendations. I had crows watching the entirety of the woods and was close to intervening before Naruto arrived. Tsunade smiled, put a check next to each of the names, and slid the paper to the middle of a stack. Perfect. Naruto, if you'd finish up your report please. Naruto would normally have to file a written report, but since this wasn't an official mission, he could get away with an oral version. After a quick recount of the day's events, Tsunade nodded in approval. You did well, Naruto. I'll be sure to assign more missions specifically to you, and you should be a full Jonin by the end of the year. Tsunade then shifted before looking to Itachi. Before I move on to your report, Itachi, I have to pass along an important message to the both of you. Tomorrow will be our first major council meeting, and now that both of you are back there couldn't be a better time. Take today to do as you like, but please report to the main briefing room tomorrow at 10 AM sharp. Naruto, you are dismissed. Naruto didn't need any more coaxing and he left immediately, eager to see the rebuilt compound. Karen sat at the rounded desk of the Uzumaki administration building, trying her best to keep herself entertained. Days here went by slowly, but she did get the occasional visitor. Sometimes they came with official business or other nonsense she told them to ask Naruto, but days like today she would get lucky. Ino had come over to keep her company. I don't know how you live in this room for most of the day, Ino complained while leaning against the desk. At least at my counter, there are flowers to keep me company. Karen snorted at the thought. Ino, only you would consider flowers company. Ino blew a raspberry at her reheated friend. Changing gears, she asked, so what's the plan for this Sunday? I was thinking maybe sushi and other seafood for dinner. Naruto should be back by then, so I don't want to risk ramen. Both girls giggled at the thought of Naruto storming in on their girls' night, raiding the kitchen for any and all ramen. Fantasy it may be, but it could very easily become a reality. We talking about ramen in here? A new voice spoke up. Both girls spun around, and they saw him at about the same time. Naruto sat draped across a chair, one leg dangling over an armrest. How he got in past a pair of kunoichi, one of which was a sensor, was unknown. Before Ino could say anything, she had to restrain a laugh as she saw a red bullet shoot into the blonde's chest. If not for the wall, that poor chair certainly would have tipped over. Naruto, you're home. Karen shouted, her voice muffled by Naruto's chest. And what a home you've made it, Karen, Naruto replied warmly. Ino was slightly taken aback at his response. Was this really Naruto? That was actually kind and thoughtful and nowhere near as awkward as an entrance she was expecting. Ino watched as he stood up, dragging her friend along with him, and finally met his gaze. Well, Naruto held open an arm while keeping the other wrapped firmly around his cousin. Would you like one too, Ino? Did she? He was her friend and she was happy to see him again, but would that be giving off the wrong kind of message? She was definitely over him, all that drama had happened over a year ago for Kami's sake. but seeing him now confident, still handsome. Yes she does, Karen answered, giving Ino no way out of the situation. The Redeed pulled Ino into the embrace and the three shared a quick hug and reunion. It was definitely nice to hug him and the guilt was almost non-existent. So, are you going to show me around or do I have to figure things out myself? Naruto asked with a smile, looking down at Karen as he did so. Said girl immediately grabbed his wrist and started dragging him around, leaving Ino alone to contemplate her thoughts once more. Naruto was impressed with how much had been finished in the last year. The list of buildings was fairly small, but they were the important ones. The administration building, Zabuza's private dojo and training field, a public set, a pair of residential houses for the three members of the clan aside from Naruto, and the clan head's manor. It was quite a bit bigger than Naruto was accustomed to at 3 stories, but he supposed that Hinata would like it. Yeah, he still thought of his future as one where Hinata was present. It wasn't weird at all, just hopeful. It didn't matter that no one had seen her in the past year, Naruto would find her. Nothing would change that. So what do you think? Karen asked nervously. What? Naruto blinked himself back to reality, startled by the sudden question. Of your new house, silly, Karen rolled her eyes at the goofy blonde. Naruto avoided her stare and asked, would you run by it again? I was distracted. Please say by me. Well, you can see it has 3 stories. The first floor has your kitchen, dining and living rooms, as well as a bathroom. The second floor has 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. The top floor has the master bedroom, connected bathroom, an office, and a few extra closets. Naruto gave her a confused look, who could ever need that much space? Well, a clan head. One with a wife and kids. Or a few, Karen said matter-of-factly. Few kids? Naruto confirmed. Karen started to tug him along towards Zabuza's, yeah. Kids. Of course. Naruto's meeting with Zabuza hadn't been much more than that, a meeting. There weren't any overly kind words from the ex-Miss Nin, and Naruto soon left him to train up the few students he had with him. Exactly what Naruto had expected if he was being honest. Haku had unfortunately been away on a mission, but she was due back by the weekend. After he had managed to say goodbye to Karen and escape, Naruto made his way to Sasuke's place. Sakura found him earlier and had wanted to meet up there when they all had the time, and since Naruto had more people to stop by, he figured she was already there. Hopefully, he wouldn't interrupt anything. The entirety of the Uchiha district still seemed cold and lifeless, but the house that Sasuke and Itachi occupied retained a bit of life. Still, Naruto couldn't help but feel the pain that still bled from the streets as he made his way to his friend's house. It is the pain of betrayal, Naruto. No matter which side you view that night from, someone was always getting betrayed. My father used to warn us about these dark emotions. The pain and thirst of loss can never be quenched by the blood of your family. The Uchiha and their pride are a perfect example of this. Sometimes I forget that you're thousands of years old, you know that. Sometimes I also think that our time with the Toads is affecting you more than me. I'm going to choose to simply accept that compliment. Naruto cut their banter short by knocking on Sasuke's door. Kurama didn't always break silences like that, but whenever he does it's usually for some sage-like reason. The last year was absolutely full of it. The door opened and Itachi was the one looking at Naruto. Naruto, hello. I must give you my thanks for rescuing my brother. In fact, if Orochimaru hadn't jumped in or I had known about your new relationship with the Kyuubi, I could have likely kept my cover. Naruto bowed awkwardly, trying his best to brush off the compliment while still accepting it. It wouldn't do to get a big head. Your team is waiting for you in the living space. Feel free to help yourself to the pantry, I have to go and prepare for tomorrow's meeting. With that, the tall Uchiha left, sweeping past Naruto in a controlled stride. That was an almost surreal encounter. Itachi had become a kind of living legend within the elemental nations, the only real S-rank threat in the active Konoha force, aside from the Sannin. Not to mention he was the most eligible bachelor in 20 years. Naruto didn't want to know how one got such a title. Naruto. We've been waiting for you. Sakura called out as soon as Naruto stepped inside the door. She was sitting back to back with a dozing Sasuke, doing her best to elbow him awake. Yeah, he had a pretty good reason to be tired after today. You guys start the meeting without me? Naruto joked. Kakashi looked up from his orange book and grunted, confused as to the changing situation. Apparently, Naruto had shown up between now and the last 15 minutes. Sakura's urging to wake Sasuke got a bit too enthusiastic and the dark-haired Uchiha slumped over. His shoulder smacked the wood of his floor before he jolted awake, scrambling to sit back up with a bit of dignity. Actually, it's nice to know not much has changed, Naruto laughed aloud as he took a seat next to his teammates. This was honestly something he had missed the most, these team meetups. Speaking of change, Sasuke muttered as he righted himself on the floor, how did the last year treat you? Naruto smiled wistfully as he thought back, likely looking like an old man remembering his glory days. In reality, he was remembering how often he had his ass handed to him over the last year. Well, my sage mode is better is a lot better now. I can summon Kurama at various tails, and I'm working on modifying the Rasengan. Aside from that, I did a lot of sparring with sages that absolutely kicked my ass most days. How about you guys? All three other people in the room stared blankly at the blonde, each for a different reason in the stories of the last year. He's going to finish Sensei's jutsu. Even I failed at that. Who the hell could hand Naruto his ass? Last time we sparred it was like fighting a blonde version of my brother. When the hell was summoning Biju a thing? Kakashi cleared his throat, catching his students' attention. Well, I for one got a lot of reading done during my long-term mission. We never did find our targets, but Itachi had much better luck than we did by the sounds of things. Isn't it the same book and/or series you've been reading since we've met? Sakura asked with a disapproving look. Art doesn't expire, the team leader defended himself. Well, I have been working my butt off, and not just with reading, Sakura pointed. Tsunade sensei taught me a lot and I have her seal of 100 healings mastered. And on top of that, I asked Lee to teach me about the gates. Of course, he brought Guy sensei into it and I'm exhausted all the time, but I can open 3 of the gates now. Oh, and I made Chunin. Naruto knew most of this already, having seen it in action. Hearing it aloud though was a sobering experience, and Kakashi looked more than pleased with his pink-haired pupil. Sakura had probably grown the most of the 3 of them, and she had a reason to be proud of herself. I'm getting better and better with my sword every time I see Zabuza. I'm training under my brother as well, and I've gotten a lot stronger even without my evolved Sharingan. I've mastered most of my family's signature Jinjutsu, and now I'm working on alternate forms of the Chidori. Sasuke finished by showing off one of his Chidori variations, a long sword-like lightning blade extending from his chirping hand. Naruto thought that the last Chidori used on Kimimaro had been a bit different, but he was understandably too distracted to take total notice. I'm still awesome and still your senior. Nuff said, Kakashi offered after heavy prompting. Come on, sensei. Give us more than that, Sakura urged. Kakashi shrugged his shoulders as he leaned forward. I spent most of the last year hunting targets you all know of. You kids had a much more exciting time than I did. This seemed to satisfy the youngest ones in the room. I am very proud of all of you and your progress, though. And like that, the mood lifted even higher and smiles were skillfully hidden from view. There was always something special about getting praise from someone who's taught you. Someone who you look up to. Especially when that someone is Kakashi. Yeah, well I bet we could take you on now, Naruto asserted after regaining his composure. Kakashi chuckled and held up a hand to stop the confirmations he knew were coming. Usually I'd love to test all your growth personally, but we have a war to prepare for. Can't be wasting too much energy now. In fact, I think the first war meeting is tomorrow. Naruto groaned aloud when he was reminded of that. Speaking of tomorrow, Sasuke started, I think I'll sleep until it starts. I'm exhausted. Go ahead and head to bed, Sasuke, Kakashi granted as he stood. He was followed by all of his students. Since he actually wants to sleep, Sakura you probably shouldn't follow him, Naruto joked as the 3 guests made their way for the door. Idiot. What? Naruto saw Kakashi open the door and suddenly he was flying out of it, his head throbbing with more pain than usual. Sakura stood with her fist outstretched, eye twitching, and saying, it's a good thing that door was open. Kakashi just shook his head as he left to the sound of Sasuke grunting in his form of agreement. He never had a dull moment around his team and he wouldn't have it any other way. Naruto stood outside of the door leading to the meeting room. Conference room. War room. It didn't really matter. It was too early to bother Kurama with being awake and actively partaking in anything, so Naruto was going in solo. Kakashi had told him how things would probably go and what he should bring, so Naruto had at least a little bit of confidence going into this. Naruto was the most recent addition to the council, and by proxy of showing respect, his first appearance should be with him being the last beside the Hokage to arrive. Kakashi had explained that this was usually so every other clan could see him enter the room and read his body to try and get a feel for what kind of clan head he would be. No problem. He could usually walk into a room without making a fool of himself. Naruto was also sitting in his mother's seat instead of his father's, one of the oldest seats in the village. The Uzumaki name carried a lot more weight than Namikaze did throughout history. In fact, Minato had been the one to found a seat on the council for his name when he became Hokage. That being said, Naruto would have some high expectations to live up to. He would make the Uzumaki clan proud. He would make his parents proud. Naruto stood up straighter and opened the door. As his foot passed the threshold of the room, all polite mutterings stopped as eyes were trained on him. Nothing more than Naruto had expected, but still a little off-putting. Naruto calmly walked to his designated spot while looking for the few people he both knew and was supposed to acknowledge. Inoichi had pledged himself to Naruto long before anyone thought he was the best thing since ramen. He was the first person Naruto offered a small nod to. The blonde man returned it with polite surprise. Next up the table was Asuma taking the place of his father. He was smoking while lazily following Naruto with his eyes and he returned Naruto's small nod with his own. It was well known that Hiruzen had a soft spot for the blonde, so Naruto had no problems making the connection with his son. And that was never minding the fact that Asuma had helped him figure out his chakra claws. Up near the head of the table was Itachi, sitting just behind the Hyuga seat. Naruto was surprised when Itachi nodded first, but he didn't show it and returned the gesture. Sasuke was likely the reason Itachi held Naruto in such regard. Sitting in the highest occupied seat of clan heads, just before the three council elders, was Hiashi Hyuga. Naruto didn't give him a nod, there was no real binding tie between them until Hinata was returned. Instead, the two shared a look. It was full of understanding and determination, and both knew that their interests were the same. Hinata would be found, safe and healthy. Naruto pulled out his seat in the silence of the room and then turned to the council elders and bowed slightly before sitting down. Naruto laid out the few notes and documents he had prepared and sighed in relief when he heard the voices start once more. Not the one in his head, Kurama was still being a lazy ass, but the ones at the table. It was a really good first impression if what Kakashi had told him was anything to go by. Naruto took note of all the empty civilian council chairs on the opposite side of the table and then decided to study the order the clans were arranged in. Clans with more influence, political or otherwise, were seated closest to the Hokage. The Hokage sat at the head of the table, of course. Following her was the three elders, Danzo, Hamura, and Kaharu. While not actually clan seats, they counted as the first three chairs since they carried the most political weight aside from the Hokage. The highest actual clan seat, but technically still chair number 4, belonged to the Senju, which made sense as they were the founders and the family of the first two Hokage. Positions 5 and 6 belonged to the Hyuga and the Uchiha respectively, and, up until the massacre, Naruto knew that the seats often switched. 7th was the Sarutobi clan, who had a significant jump up the rankings since Hiruzen became Hokage. Naruto wasn't sure if Asuma had always sat the chair or if his father had picked another representative, but everyone seemed surprised to see the chain smoker present. In the 8th chair sat the Aburam clan head. Naruto didn't know him personally, but he was aware that he was Shino's father. A quick check of one of his notes told Naruto that his name was Shibe. That didn't sound right, Shibe. Wow, he had to start taking better notes. Sakura could probably help. That wasn't the only place he had to cram things on a page due to poor planning. Apparently, the Aburam single-handedly wiped out a rival clan in the last war, earning them a bit of a political boost despite the social barriers they were known for. Ironically, Naruto was seated 9th at the table, something he thought Kurama would enjoy. Was it pure symbolism that put the Uzumaki, the literal guardians of the Kyuubi, here? Or maybe honor to the past favors and deeds? The next three seats were interchangeable between the Inoshikacho trio. They made a large impact in the past with their teamwork, and they cared little for their actual positions, since everyone gave them the respect they each felt was deserved. The Inyazuka made up the 13th slot, and the last two seats were unoccupied. Number 14 belonged to Gai-sensei, but he was stationed elsewhere for the meeting. The last chair was his father's and would be the first to be replaced if another clan found themselves deserving a spot on the Council of 15. The door opposite the one Naruto entered was opened, and a line of well-dressed businessmen and women streamed in. They were the 15 most powerful, richest civilians in Konoha, and they liked to annoy the Hokage during times like these. Naruto was sure they saw it as something important, but no one was really fooled. Naruto spent the time waiting for the civilians to find their seats, pretending to read over his papers. There was no one to talk to with an antisocial Aburam to his left and the bored Shikaku to his right. That must be where Shikamaru gets it from. Eventually, a third door opened, one behind the Hokage's seat. Jiraiya was the first to emerge, followed by Kakashi and Guy. They were the three top jonin in the village, present to act as peacekeepers in case the council became agitated. They were actually just for showing off to the civilian side, everyone knew that there were Anbu ready to kill everyone in the room. Probably. Naruto stood with the rest of the 30-person table as Tsunade entered wearing her full robes and hat, the first time Naruto had seen her do so. She looked like a true symbol of pride and strength, fitting for the strongest Kunoichi in the elemental nations. When Tsunade sat and removed her hat, the table followed suit. Her three jonin of choice remained standing behind her, seemingly alert for any stirs in the room. Well, Guy was. Kakashi's one visible eye seemed to struggle to stay open and focused, while both of Jiraiya's were roaming the chests of every woman in the room. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first war council in over 20 years, Tsunade started off. She had the total attention of every person in the room. As many of you already know, we are at war with Iwa, Kumo, the majority of Mist, and whatever minor country villages decide to join their cause. Hostilities arose due to one of our three major enemies, abducting a young girl the last public Chunin exams and killing or injuring others during their escape. Everyone could feel a small spike of anger come from two distinct points in the room, and both Naruto and Hiashi refused to care. Instead of ratting out one another or confessing, each village became more and more belligerent and disrespectful in dismissing the claims. Eventually, they declared war on Konoha. Suna stands at our back, as does Grass and Waterfall. A few mutters went through the seated assembly, but they quickly silenced themselves. We are here today to discuss our course of action, key positions for the duration of this war, as well as to handle any concerns or questions. We shall also decide on an adequate opening few missions to send teams on before we get too many full squads sent into the field. The collective weary sigh escaped the shinobi side of the council. The questions and concerns portion would drag on forever as usual, and it's always by the civilian council. Tsunade cleared her throat and was handed a paper by Jiraiya. The first order of business shall be the assignment of roles. Many of these assignments will be unchanged from the last time we went to war, and I am grateful that we have such experience available to us. Many of the civilians leaned forward in their seats, hoping to be chosen for one spot or another. Naruto found it kind of sad really. My lead general and strategist will be Shikaku Nara. I'm positive your performance will do your clan as proud as your previous one. Shikaku stood and bowed to the Hokage before retaking his seat. It was of no real surprise, the man was a tactical genius. That must also be where Shikamaru gets that from. Jiraiya will remain the spy master and lead infiltrator. In conjunction with this, Inoichi Yamanaka will remain the head of intelligence and communication. Inoichi bowed while Jiraiya simply inclined his head. I am placing the Hyuga in charge of guarding the borders. I will leave the decision on how many to dedicate to our border safety and how many to give to our fighting force on you, Hiashi. The pale-eyed man gave his own flowing bow. I am placing Konoha's financial affairs in the hands of Mibuki Haruno, Mino was Ashi. Naruto honestly stopped listening after the list turned into the civilian side of things. He was pretty sure most of the last positions were to keep the merchants happy with pointless titles. The only position of importance was the first one regarding the war's funding, and Naruto only recognized Sakura's mother and the owner of the bank from the names listed. What the hell were they doing handing out jobs for a home care and cleaning committee anyway? But that out of the way, we can get into the statistical side of this war. Our last reported census places our total forces around the 15,000 mark. Of that number, 8,000 are genin, 5,000 are chunin, and 2,000 are jonin. Naruto saw Shikaku write those numbers down on a pad of paper. Jiraiya has reported the number for Kumo and Iwa to be around 20,000 and 18,000 respectively. They both have more shinobi than us, but we hold our standards higher. Our brave shinobi are worth 5 of each of theirs. Naruto could appreciate the little bit of pep talk, but the hard numbers still made him uncomfortable. Apparently, Shikaku shared his thoughts. The man made small sounds of displeasure as he wrote down notes and numbers. Suna can offer 11,000 shinobi to the fight, with Grass and Waterfall combining for another 9,000. We do not know for sure the allies of our enemies, so we cannot account for their numbers. What of Mist, Lady Tsunade? Itachi asked, his head tilted in curiosity. We do not know how much of the country has started to follow my former teammate, Tsunade's brow furrowed in frustration at the thought. Sound alone invaded us with an estimated 6,000 troops. We killed and captured almost half of them, so it would be safe to assume that in the last year their numbers have grown back to around 4,000. We should assume with the addition of Mist our opposition doubles that number. Naruto heard a huff and more scratches from Shikaku. That poor man. Now, our main focus should be on Kumo, Mist, and any of their allies. We can trust Suna and our allies to guard our rear from Iwa, and we can either hold off or eliminate our threats. Further deliberation with my strategist is needed to cement a plan into place. Mutters ran through the room as the words left her mouth, and Naruto watched silently as she silenced the room in a creative way. Her hand rose, and her fingers indicated she wanted Jiraiya to approach her. As soon as Naruto's first sensei was close enough, her hand wrapped around Jiraiya's jaw. Hard. Naruto smiled as he saw fear widen in his perverted role model's eyes, and Tsunade threw him forward. The Sannin screamed as he flew down the table, the sound getting louder until it passed Naruto and quickly fading as the flying man went past, and the room was shocked into silence. The far wall held no resistance to the large projectile, and a hole into the hallway was created. Everyone knew then how hard their Hokage threw one of her oldest friends. Well, that's one way to use your top jonin to silence the table. Now, are there any suggestions on preliminary missions, possible teams for the missions, or anything you wish to discuss with me or the rest of the council? Tsunade asked, her voice unchanged from the last time she spoke. We should send a team to Omegakure to try and secure their allegiance, one of the civilians suggested. Literally every one of the present shinobi had to fight a visible reaction. Did a civilian just offer a good idea? Tsunade recovered quickly and answered, I will have a diplomatic team sent to AIM, thank you for the suggestion. Soft mutters went through the crowd as people tried to come up with their own ideas. Tsunade leaned in to listen to her advisors. Naruto decided that this was as good a time as any. Time to make an impression. Naruto ruffled his papers, smacked the bottom of the stack on the table to neaten them up, and cleared his throat to get the room's attention. Lady Tsunade, if I may? He asked. He was still the new kid on the block, literally the youngest person in attendance, so he was showing as much respect as he could. Of course, Naruto. Anyone seated in the Uzumaki's chair doesn't need to ask to have their voice heard, was her response. Naruto smiled in thanks for both the personal reassurance in the new environment and the political backing her words held. The Senju and the Uzumaki were distantly related and in the past, his family had done great things for Leaf. Tsunade wanted everyone to know that she would treat Naruto like a true Uzumaki, despite his name only recently being validated. I have a few points, actually. Most of the reasons that smaller hidden villages turn on us are because war between the major countries destroys their lives. In order to avoid this, I suggest we inform the residents of Northern T country to evacuate. I suggest we do the same for those in Wave. Even though they do not have a military to attack us with, the fact that they are a major player in marine trade means that they could wreck us economically in the future. Naruto's words hit the money-minded civilians extra hard, something he had been counting on to reach through to them. As well as future repercussions, the bridge to Wave should prove to be an important supply route during the war, one we should move to secure early on. As for T, everywhere between our border and the border to Frost Country should be cleared. Tsunade smacked the table once to silence the room. Wave, I understand, but what drew you to adding T into the equation? Tsunade already mentally agreed, but she wanted to hear Naruto's reasoning. In the last Great War, Frost aligned with Kumo, and the one before that they were nearly destroyed by Kumo. Knowing this, it is in Frost's best interest to align themselves with Kumo. T would get caught up in the crossfire, and we want to be able to fight without worrying about the lives of innocents. Nods showed the approval of Naruto's words, so he continued. I would recommend 2 teams be sent to Wave in order to both deliver the message and secure the bridge. I believe that the team sent to T should be prepared to act as an assault team as well, since it would be prudent to also have them scout the border and few miles into Frost Country for signs of Kumo activity. If possible, they could try and persuade the country to our side. Tsunade leaned to the elders to get their opinions on the matter. As she did so, Naruto caught the eye of a few of the older clan heads, many of whom gave him looks of approval. So far so good. When Tsunade straightened back up, the room quieted. In addition to your solid preemptive plan, the elders would like to add a team to go to Sound. Their mission will be to locate and destroy old bases used by Sound. That was the approval to Naruto's proposal that he was looking for. He sat back and waited out the duration of the rest of the suggestions. Most of them were utter crap spouted by the civilian side. Protect these specific luxury trade routes commonly used for exotic spices and trinkets. Assassinate the Raikage as if that was a viable option. Ugh. Idiots. Okay, does anyone have recommendations for any of the approved missions? Tsunade asked while rubbing her temples. I would volunteer my nephew Neji to join the Sound team, Hiashi immediately volunteered. Thank you, Hiashi, I know what he can contribute to the team and will add him immediately, Tsunade responded while writing down the name. I volunteer myself to the Wave team. I led my Genin team there during the construction of their bridge, so I will be a trusted face, Kakashi spoke from behind the Hokage. Tsunade only nodded and wrote down his name. Naruto spoke up again. With the permission of Itachi Uchiha and Mibukki Haruno, I would like to volunteer Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno to accompany me on the T team. We can also rendezvous with the Sound team after we complete our primary objectives. The room tensed, and the Hokage looked Naruto dead in the eyes for a solid 10 seconds. I can agree to that 3-man cell if both Itachi and Mibukki agree. There was a bit of an uproar from the civilian side of the table. One of the older, balding men stood up and said, Lady Hokage, are you sure we can trust such a vital mission to a trio of Chunin? Especially when one of them stands to gain so much at this table from volunteering himself. Naruto bristled at that. Hard. He was accepted as a real person since he revealed his parentage, but he still was held in rather low light due to his other circumstances. Not by many, but enough that it affected situations like this. To top it off, this cockwaffle assumed Naruto was as power-hungry as he was. Tsunade remained completely calm, looked at the standing man, and then smiled lightly. Naruto felt his stomach drop a little. He knew enough about the woman to know that a reserved smile like that meant she was pissed. Naruto, you have my permission to validate yourself as leader of this mission. Naruto smiled and nodded at his Hokage. Thank you, Lady Tsunade. Naruto stood and locked eyes with every person in the room for a split second before settling on the man standing across from him. I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Takubetsu Jonin of Konoha. I have single-handedly killed summons that entire squads could not. I have single-handedly killed dozens of men at once, on more than one occasion. A year ago, as a genin, I was listed as an A-rank threat by both Iwa and Kumo. I am the only living user of the Hirishin, which is how I plan to rendezvous with the Sound team. I have defeated Jinchuriki with nothing more than handmade seals. I defeated a reincarnated Shadame Hokage in the same manner. I am the Jinchuriki of the strongest Biju in the world, the same Biju I now have the ability to summon into battle at his full strength. By the end of his speech, everyone was slack-jawed or in gripping fear of the blonde. Much of that information wasn't well known, and his last little boast trumped everyone's expectations. Well, except Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Kakashi that is. Any objections to Naruto leading this team? Tsunade asked. I volunteer my brother for the position, Itachi responded. And I volunteer my daughter Sakura, Mibuyuki immediately followed. Good. In that case, the meeting is adjourned. Tsunade stood and left through her door, leaving a still stunned room to watch Naruto gather his papers. Naruto staggered into the massive new house of his. He was sore, tired, and conflicted. After the meeting had taken place, Naruto had made his way over to the hospital to see Sakura and deliver the news. She was there alright, and the lady at the desk had even directed Naruto to the room Sakura had been assigned to for the day. Naruto didn't expect to see Sasuke present. Apparently, he had somehow burned the majority of his forearms and then he went in to get some attention from his lady friend. Overall it just made Naruto's job easier, but it was still funny to think about. They were both ecstatic to hear that they had a mission together so soon after Naruto's return, but quickly sobered when Naruto told them what the mission was. They weren't little kids anymore and they were getting sent on a high-risk air-rank mission. To the land of Tea to top it off. There was a reason between all of them that they were hesitant to return. Naruto had spent the rest of the day preparing in his big house while clones moved personal things in. Near the end of the day, though, Naruto tested out the training field to vent out whatever frustrations the mission had brought back up. All in all, it had a passing grade and the dirt tasted just like it was supposed to. Now, 3 hours later, Naruto was setting his scrolls on the living room table. Camping gear and clothes, extra weapons, provisions, and his sealing supplies. This was an important mission and his first as a leader. He'd make sure everything went fine. 2 days of travel brought Team 7 to Konoha's border with the land of Tea. The trio had actually stopped at the same outpost Naruto had first been deployed to. Everyone there was unfamiliar, though, and a fair number of them were Hyuga. This outpost has a better map of Tea than we do, it should show us most of the villages we need to hit, Naruto explained as he led his team through the halls. He was impressed with them so far, especially Sakura. Neither of them had asked for a break during the trip, but that was expected of his team by now. What impressed Naruto was the fact that neither of them appeared to be any worse for the wear. Do they also have a cafeteria? Sakura asked, more than tired of eating bland ration bars. Naruto smiled although neither of them could see it. Take this next left and you'll see the sign. You both can grab something to eat, I can read a map by myself. So he can learn, came Sasuke's dry reply. Naruto turned around in confusion when they reached the hallway leading to food. Sakura, when did you teach him humor? Said Pinkett simply laughed once as she dragged her smirking boyfriend away. We'll bring you whatever they have for ramen. She knows me so well. Literally everyone knows that about you. At the end of the hallway was the information center and it held the map they wanted. Stepping inside, Naruto waved to the oddly familiar-looking Hyuga. They all shared a look though, so who knows, and made his way to the hanging Tea map. The plan so far was to hit every town and village along the western border and send them to the relatively safe southeast, towards the capital. Naruto planned on having the fleeing villagers go through any towns between the western border and the capital, effectively clearing the region while resupplying. Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3 Naruto counted 7 villages and 1 larger town in total along the path they would take. It shouldn't take too long at each, so maybe 3 days to reach the Frost Country border. Naruto took a good 15 minutes tracing a finger along the shortest and easiest paths to take, choosing the ones he preferred and memorizing what landmarks he could. Kurama pointed out a few things when he felt inclined to do so, such as a few of the swathes of forest in the route were marked for prime hunting grounds. Naruto took that into consideration and mentally marked such an area for one night's camp. We brought you the wet noodles, Sasuke announced as he and Sakura entered. Whoa, insult me all you like, but you leave the gods' chosen food out of it, Naruto warned as he took the warm cup. Sakura sighed at their antics, but she was happy that Naruto was starting to open up about being more lenient on missions. He used to be a real stickler about staying professional. So what's the plan? Naruto took a long second, or 9, to slurp at the noodles before smacking his lips and turning to the map. We're here and we'll travel this way, he trailed his finger up the western border and hit a total of 8 settlements. They'll flee east, going through every village they can and alerting the rest. We'll camp here and here before we cross into Frost on the 3rd night. Sasuke nodded along with the plan, content to trust in Naruto's lead for this one. Sakura, though, took a closer look at the map. Would you pick that second campsite? We could get closer to the border on that day and leave less ground to cover in the morning. Naruto was honestly pleased that he had someone with him who would not only follow, but also question him. He had been taught that it was the best way to learn to lead. Kurama noticed that it was a marked hunting ground, so I decided to call that one early and get some real food in us before the big push. We'd be far enough from the border I'll feel comfortable with a fire. That satisfied the pink Kunoichi, and after that, they were ready to head out. Naruto let Sasuke take lead, telling him to watch for the next landmark. Knowing that they could keep up, Naruto pushed the speed a bit. With nothing more than a stirring of treetops, Team 7 was off. The first village was in sight now, and not just to Sasuke's eyes. Naruto retook the lead since he'd be in charge of talking to the village leader. Okay, we don't want to be here for more than half an hour. We offer our help to get people ready to leave, but we're gone in 30. Understood, the other two members of the team confirmed. Like most small villages, the trees were cut back about 100 yards away from the walls. This let the watchmen see any approaching animals or people. Now, such a thing isn't too much of a problem for ninja at the level of Sasuke, Sakura or Naruto, but the three walked into the clearing regardless. A shout and a wave came from a lone watchman, and Naruto waved back, trying to convey his friendly intentions. A few samurai appeared at the gate, and Naruto knew that they were just a precaution. "Hello, travelers. What is your business in our home?" The watchman asked once Team 7 was within earshot. He sounded friendly enough, but he was definitely ready to signal the attack. Naruto stopped walking once the question was asked. "We are shinobi from Konoha. We come as messengers, trying to save as many of your people as possible." All of the samurai moved their sword hands to their pommels, the collective rustle of their armor being impressively in sync. "I apologize, stranger, but your message has the tone of a threat," the watchman said warily. If these were honestly Konoha ninja, there wasn't much this handful of mid-tier samurai could do to stop them, and the watchman knew it. "Quite the opposite, sir. We come bearing the news of another looming war, and we would prefer if you and your people evacuated immediately. I would be remiss if innocents were caught in the bloodshed between Konoha and Kumo." The watchman cursed then. "Another war? And you wish to use our home as a battleground? Why must you shinobi always trample on those beneath you? Are we not deserving of our peace? Is war that important to you that you would upturn the lives of every country between you and your enemy?" Naruto bowed his head. This was a man who had seen at least one war in his time, likely at the feet of fighting shinobi. "I apologize, sincerely. It is not our intention to sully your lands with blood, but even if we are simply passing our armies through to fight on the enemy ground, we may be attacked. I do not want your children to see something so horrible as a war for many years in the event that I can't ask for never." Sasuke and Sakura stood in silent support of their friend and leader, and they heard the sigh the watchman gave. "Fine. Thank you for your warning, and may whatever gods be bless you on your travels. We will warn others on our travels east." Naruto let out a sigh of relief as the samurai went back to a neutral stance. "We can offer you and yours 20 minutes of aid in preparation, but we have many others we need to warn north of you." Naruto was waved off. "Go, warn our kinsmen. We are a poor village, and no one has much to prepare. We will be gone by noon." Naruto waved one more time before leading his team into the northmost trees. He let out a relieved breath and leaned against a tree. "Not bad for my first non-violent diplomacy attempt, eh guys? Naruto, where did you learn how to do that?" "That was actually really well said," Sakura asked as she let her team leader regain his composure. "Spent a year with sages, that's literally the only way they talk." "You pick up a thing or two," Naruto joked lightly. "You handled yourself well. Your masters would be proud. You good to get going?" Sasuke asked. "Yup, we have extra time now, but we should keep moving." The rest of the day was met with two more experiences that mirrored the first. Both of the other settlements in the day were small, and Naruto even let Sakura try talking to the third one of the day. Sasuke would take the last one tomorrow, but for now they were busy finding the night's campsite. "I can see a clearing ahead, there's a large pond in the middle of it," Sasuke reported from the lead. "We should be fairly close then," Naruto commented. "You mark the first camp to be just north of the pond," Sakura added, and Naruto found himself grateful once more for her skills in memorizing things. Sasuke grunted and led them a little way to the left, likely to get around the body of water. There was in fact a good flat area of land clear of trees just north of the water. Naruto gave the silent signal to start setting up camp, and as he set up his own tent, a trio of clones took off into the woods to both scout and gather firewood. Once the fire was going and everyone was eating the bland, heated travel meals, Naruto said, "I'll leave a clone on guard at night. It will be able to maintain sage mode by meditating all night, and that should give us a pretty good range of protection." "The sound border is to the west, right?" Sasuke asked as he ate. "Yeah, we have almost 5 miles between us and the border, though," Sakura answered, remembering such on the map. "Hopefully Neji and his team are already in sound and marking up bases. It will give us a bit of a cushion to the west, but we do have to watch out for Odo and fleeing this way. I'll have the sage clone send out lesser clones to try and take out anyone it feels is a threat, but if things need a real ninja, it'll wake one of us. Probably Sasuke since you can see in the dark." "Damn. Life sucks, Buttercup. Well, see you guys in the morning," Naruto asked as he stood. "Sleep tight, Naruto," Sakura called out, following the blonde's lead and heading to her tent. She shared a quick kiss with Sasuke before they went to their separate tents. Naruto sat up suddenly, not entirely sure why he had reacted, but doing his best to wake up nonetheless. He always slept with one of his gloves on, and now a set of claws were extended towards the flap of his tent. When his eyes finished waking up, he saw that a lesser clone had entered his tent. HNG. Guh, he was basically a Sasuke now, shit. Boss, we got a large group of shinobi fleeing Odo, they'll cross us about half a mile north. We could engage or go unnoticed. Wake the others, Naruto said lowly, putting on the rest of his clothes. If they're in the same tent, I don't want the memories. The clone gave a small two-fingered salute and disappeared behind the flap. Naruto finished dressing, going as far as to pull out his familiar black cloak and hood. The other glove went on, and he moved out by the remains of the fire to wait for his team. Sasuke came out first, looking no different than normal and completely awake. He flashed through all the stages of his Sharingan as he walked, likely trying to wake up fully. Sakura wasn't long after Sasuke, thankfully from her own tent. Naruto wasn't sure why he was so worried about that, it would be funny as hell to catch them in such a compromising situation. Naruto, why do I feel the need to hurt you? Sakura asked as soon as the thought finished in his mind. Thinking quickly, Naruto replied smoothly with, because I just woke you up in the middle of the night to go hunt down a group of Odo nin. Sakura nodded and agreed, oh, yeah, that'll do it. How many and how far? Sasuke asked, cutting straight to business. So he reverts back to a 12-year-old when he's tired, that was good to know. 14, and they'll pass a half mile north of us in 10 minutes. I won't force you to go since it's not part of the mission, but I thought I'd at least offer. Okay, cool, let's go. Sasuke didn't even hesitate to answer. Sakura shrugged and started to stretch for the coming travel and fight. Naruto, well pleased for the company, couldn't help but throw in a jab at his dark-haired friend. Wow, Sasuke. I didn't know you were so selfless that you'd go out of your way to kill people. The innocence at stake here must really be influencing you. Or he was tired and wasn't thinking straight, Naruto didn't know which answer was better. Not even close, dipshit, Sasuke snarked as he cracked his neck. It's because you're our leader and our best friend. We don't care if it's a mission or if it's because you think one of them is a hot alien with 3 tits that your sensei wants a drawing of. Where you go, we'll follow you. Now hurry up so we can get back to sleep. With that, Sasuke took off walking to the forest edge, leaving a stunned Naruto flapping his jaw in a futile attempt to understand what had just occurred. Sakura walked up to him, closed his mouth, and pat him on the shoulder in a show of comfort. He says these things when he's tired. Come on, let's get this over with. Stop, this is the spot the sage clone says they're on course to cross, Naruto said, coming to a halt in the trees. What's the plan? Sasuke asked lowly. I'll have a clone hide underground with a modified explosive node attached and Sasuke be in the trees above it. Once the first half of their group passes the clone, it will detonate the tag and hopefully take out the last 2 or 3 of them. Sasuke, you hop down behind the smoke to cut off their retreat. Will you not get the memory of literally blowing up? Sakura asked with more than a little concern as Naruto placed the note on a clone's chest. Nah, I've learned how to disable the memory gain for specific clones. It's come in handy a few times, Naruto replied. Rest of the plan, guys. We only have a few more minutes, Sasuke urged. Oh yeah? Sasuke, you take lead on this one. In the dark, your eyes will be a pretty scary incentive to surrender. I'll have my mask on and 11 clones spread out so you can just pretend we're like your faceless men or whatever you want. How's your acting and improv skills? Why what? You'll do fine. Just be as dark as you like to pretend you really are and start ordering me to kill them off if they don't cooperate. Sakura, you be in the woods for a straggler or 2. No offense, but you would kinda stand out in this situation. Sakura moved into the treetops. No, I get it. You boys have your fun. Cool. Okay, let's come up with a script for you, Sasuke. We only need one of them alive. Iba had no idea how the base had been found. There was no trace of it on the surface, the hatch was even buried via earth jutsu after every use. It couldn't have been by smell either, no one would be stupid enough to leave anything on the surface like that. All Iba had been able to do was destroy what files he could, gather the 13 most important experiments, and flee towards Master Orochimaru's new area in mist. So far things were going okay aside from the fact that all they had was weapons and a bit of water. Iba surmised that they would have to hunt and steal for food. Iba may have made a personal decision when he fled. In all honesty, Experiment 7 wasn't vital by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, she was almost put down since the mark given her had been so defective. But she was so sweet and she kind of reminded Iba of his daughter and she didn't deserve to die at the hands of those konoha douchebags. Suddenly, the peace of the night was split by an earth-shattering explosion, sending everyone tumbling forward. Iba yelled along with his men, his ears ringing as he skidded to a stop in the dirt. Iba looked back the way they came and his eyes grew with fear of what was hiding in the dark. Smoke and dust were in the process of clearing, but it was easy enough to see the twin torsos impaled to tree trunks. Long, sharp shards of bloody bone stuck through the stomachs of each torso, only one of them still having a limb attached. He knew both of them in an instant. It was experiments 1 and 2, Orochimaru's attempts at recreating the Kagaya bloodline. It had been a partial success, and both of them were capable of both elongating and strengthening the bones in their arms. The bones that now stuck them to trees. As the dust finally settled and the remaining 12 of Iba's group huddled together defensively, an even more chilling sight became visible. A lone man stood, outlined against a moonlit background. He held the head of one of Iba's perished men in one hand and a long, deadly katana in the other. "Who are you? Why have you attacked us?" Iba called out angrily. The figure started slowly, am he who stalks the night. And you are nothing more than my prey. The man tossed aside the head of whichever bone brother he held, the dull thump resounding much louder than it should have. Iba felt a sense of relief then. This was nothing more than some asshole trying to play the hero. Oh really? Well, Mr. Night Stalker, we seem to have you a bit outnumbered here. There came a low, dark chuckle, and the figure lifted his head. Iba didn't even know he had been looking at the ground and resented himself for not attacking when he had the advantage. He hated himself a lot more for almost soiling himself at the new sight. The man now stared straight at Iba and his group of refugees. With the eyes of a devil. They seemed to absolutely glow in the darkness, illuminated by whatever evil fire burned within this man. They were the eyes of a predator, the eyes of one who truly did stalk the night itself. I want you, the katana started drawing circles in the dirt, the grating of metal on dirt, also seemingly magnified 1,000-fold, to look around you. Look and see my pack that surrounds you. Ready to kill you at my leisure. Iba didn't want to. He didn't want to take his eyes away from the glowing orbs of this demon in man's skin and have his head stolen from his body. That is until he heard a soft feminine whimper behind him. No, she shouldn't have to die. Iba looked to his left and blanched. Emerging from the very darkness itself were hooded faceless men. There were beams of moonlight that illuminated one of their heads, and there was actually no face. More demons at the beck and call of their master. I shall allow one of you to flee, but you, speaker, must stay and be the one to choose. The katana never stopped its loud circles. Iba did not trust this man. Demon. Thing. But if he was telling the truth, 11, head east. A large muscular man hesitantly stepped out of the group circle. Iba had chosen him because he had the best chance of surviving the journey. His body had been modified the most, his skin replaced with armor like living leather plates. His bones were 3 times as strong as any man's besides Kimimaro. 11 was strong, he would be the one to tell Orochimaru everything. 11 walked slowly to the western edge of the ring of faceless men, absolutely terrified of getting too close to one, even though he towered a foot above them. Once he was past the circle, he broke into a run and disappeared into the forest. Iba felt a glimmer of hope. That hope was immediately dashed when he heard a short yell, a loud, meaty impact, and rustling foliage. 11 came back through the trees, flying high above everyone's heads. He slammed into a tree above a faceless man, limp and unmoving. 11's body fell, only to have his head caught by one of the demons in black. And promptly crushed in one hand with a burst of strength and chakra. The demon tossed 11 back to the group, and Iba saw that his ribs had been destroyed by a single, massive impact. He had been dead long before his head was crushed in. Everyone in his group shifted nervously and drew what weapons they had. I'm sorry, it seems that my associates did not agree with my mercy. How unfortunate, the red-eyed demon drawled over the noise his sword tip made. Maybe at some point, I will ask for what you might call a surrender. Iba felt his pride take a blow at the words. He was one of Orochimaru's lieutenants. Trusted with an entire base on his honor as a man. He would never go down without a fight. My eyes see your truth, dead one. They know your pride will force you to fight. And as such, you will force them all to die. Iba couldn't breathe too well now. He was so fucking scared, how does one fight a demon in the first place? This was a children's story type of stuff. The low, menacing tone was back. Then the sword stopped the circles. The silence was absolutely deafening, even the surrounding bugs had gone to hiding, leaving Iba and his group to listen only to their frantic heartbeats. The faceless men didn't move, but blue, ethereal claws formed at their hands, in perfect sync. The man lifted his sword and pointed it at the group. 4, 9, and 12 were pointed out, and Iba was stuck between fear and confusion. You 3 will die. Now. Iba didn't even see it happen. There were 3 blurs, and 3 faceless men seemed to settle back into place, their cloaks floating gently down. And then every person pointed at by the red-eyed demon dropped to the ground. 4 was missing her head, 9 lacked most of his throat and the internal organs that littered the ground, and 12 had half of her brain exposed to the pale moonlight. 7 threw up directly behind Iba, and he moved directly in front of her so she couldn't be pointed at. 3, 5, 6, 8, diamond formation. Iba managed to call out. 3 shakily took the left flank, 6 the right, 8 faced the rear, and 5 took point. Five did his best to stare down the red eyes in front of them, but he couldn't meet their gaze. The demon in charge let this happen, and when all 4 experiments activated a level 1 curse mark, he chuckled. Kill all 4 of them. More blurs of black speed, but this time there were grunts and a single scream of pain. Iba watched in horror as one of the faceless ones cut both of Five's hamstrings with his otherworldly claws, kneeling stock still behind the still-living experiment. To Iba's continued horror, the being flickered from existence and reappeared in front of Five. Five was on his knees, so he was next to powerless to stop the being from reaching out with both hands, grasping the sides of his head, and ending his life. Iba felt his heart stop when he saw Five's now lifeless eyes and face where the back of his head should have been. A hand was placed on the top of his head, and blood seeped from every orifice of Five's skull. Soon, it blew apart in a bloody, swirling mass of chakra, his brain having been blended from the inside. Please, Iba choked back a sob. He couldn't take this nightmare anymore. He and all of his men were powerless to stop these demons. Yes, I see the fight leaving you. My eyes tell me much, but you too, the eyes and the sword both trained on first 10 and then 13, must still die. Before Iba could say or do anything, the last 2 of his fighters were gone. Not killed before his eyes, just gone. The passing unnatural breeze gave the impression that they had been sped away, but Iba saw nothing. Tommy, please. No. 13 could be heard just off in the woods, and Iba fell to his knees when he heard her loud sobs fall silent. That was it. He could do no more. He and 7 would die here at the hands of these monsters instead of at the mercy of Konoha. At this point, it would be so much nicer to die. Iba had seen too many nightmares to ever wake up from. Now I see it. Your eyes tell mine all I need to know. You are finished, a slave to whatever whim I may have. But you, the man did something new and pointed with his hand instead of his sword. He was pointing over Iba's head and at 7. Yes, you, child. You were once pure. Taken from your world of light and plunged into a darkness not of your own making. You, I shall choose to save. 2 of the faceless men parted, and from between them came what could only be a goddess. Yes. Please, she's innocent, I swear. Iba confirmed desperately, the tears springing from his eyes. Silence, worm. The harsh order from the demon sent Iba sprawling to the dirt, groveling silently to plead for his life. The goddess seemed to glide into the circle of faceless men, her aura light and calming. Her arms glowed green with the telltale sign of healing, and she held out a dainty hand to 7. Hum, was the only soft, soothing sound she made. Her steps were silent, and her beautiful pink hair covered her eyes with what little length it held. As quickly as she came, she was gone. Taking 7 and leaving Iba alone with the demons of his nightmare. Again, the sword was in the dirt. The unnaturally loud, grating sound got closer as the furiously calm red eyes approached with slow, powerful steps. I see you. Your essence. You can hide nothing from me now, and you are broken. Iba knew he was right, so he remained on the ground and placed his forehead to the dirt in hopes of appeasing this angry, dark god. He said not a word, and the clearing was filled with a heavy sense of malice. It seemed to come from every direction, not just from his new dark lord. The feet stopped in front of Iba, and his lord paused before doing anything. Iba felt the blade dip under his chin, urging him to raise his head. He did so eagerly, quick to try and please his new master. He looked up and immediately into the blood-red eyes of his master. The intricate swirling lines holding some dark occult meaning that he may never truly understand. Surrender your life to me and my kin. Surrender yourself now, and I swear to you that your soul will never see the torment your body has known. Iba nodded enthusiastically. Yes, my dark lord. I am yours from now until your need of me dies. I swear it. The demon rose to his full height and locked eyes with one of his faceless men. Simultaneously, every member of the circle burst into a cloak of awe and fear-inducing red power. Their arms raised, and one of them appeared behind Iba, placing a cold hand on his shoulder. The Dark Lord giveth, so too shall the Dark Lord taketh away. And Iba's world went dark. Vertigo. Pain. Extreme nausea. When he opened his eyes to discard the contents of his stomach, he recognized the walls of Konoha, as well as the sitting form of the young 7. What in every kami's name was that shit? Sakura screamed as Naruto smiled along with Sasuke. That was bad fucking ass is what it was. Kurama laughed along although he knew she couldn't hear him. That was the single most baddest example of roleplay I've ever seen. Naruto shouted back, smacking his Uchiha friend on the back. I didn't know you had it in you, Sasuke. You should quit being a ninja and work in movies. Nah, my whole family just specializes in dark and broody, that's all. Sasuke tried to brush it off, but his smile was much too large to hide. Besides, you read my improv ed signals perfectly. Improvised, and thank you. But that one line you said, surrender your life to me and my kin. Surrender yourself now, and I swear to you that your soul will never see the torment your body has known was just freaking perfect. No, you guys, Sakura rubbed at her temples, that was so fucked up. Naruto looked at her blankly before responding with, yeah. That's why it worked. That guy will be so easy for Inoichi or Ibiki to break now. Sakura actually swung at Naruto for that one. That poor guy will never be the same. That kind of trauma ends lives, Naruto. And that little girl couldn't have been more than 10. Naruto did sober a bit when the child was brought up. Luckily, Sasuke jumped in for him. That's why I focused all of the mind games on the guy who seemed in charge and gave you the signal to get her out of there as soon as I could. Sakura narrowed her eyes at her boyfriend. She watched everyone in her group get brutally murdered. She watched as her leader slowly descended into panic-fueled insanity. And you're telling me that since she was sent to Konoha before you started talking like some wannabe fucking deity, that it's totally fine. Sasuke shied away from her after that outburst. She was really pissed. Maybe things did get a bit dark. Wise, couldn't you just put them in a Jinjutsu? If they broke it, they'd know we were just shinobi and would have resisted a lot more. Why not just kill them all at once and leave that guy alive? I've seen Naruto do it before. His spirit wouldn't have broken the way it did, and Ibiki would have struggled to break him since he would be fiercely loyal to Orochimaru. Damn it, Sasuke, let me win. No. Sakura, Naruto said soothingly, she wasn't a normal little girl. She was one of Orochimaru's experiments. Nothing she saw here today will trump what happens in those labs, trust me. The important thing is that she's in Konoha now and they can try and save her from a worse psyche than Anko's. Sakura crossed her arms and huffed. It was still way too dark. And you made Sasuke seem like a villain. Naruto looked at Sasuke and tried to signal him with his eyes. Sasuke rolled his in understanding. Yeah, but was I at least a powerful and mysteriously sexy villain? Sakura blushed only a tiny amount. Maybe a little. Naruto laughed before heading back to the camp at a slow walk. Come on, let's get what hours of sleep we can before daybreak. And for the record, Sakura, you played your part beautifully as well. The rest of that night went quietly and the entirety of Team 7 woke up ready to scarf down a quick breakfast and leave. Naruto had the sage clone disperse the natural energy back into the ground before dispelling. The first stop of the day would be the biggest settlement they would encounter during the mission, and once Naruto got it out of the way, he'd see if Sasuke wanted to take either the next one or the last one of the day. Sasuke was once again in the lead of the group, using his eyes to scout ahead twice as far as either of his teammates could see. The town wasn't too far out from camp, maybe an hour's travel. Likely less since Naruto liked to push the speed when he could. Naruto, I'm seeing a massive clearing of almost pure dirt ahead. It looks like it could be a crater of some kind, Sasuke reported as the team sped through the treetops. Really? It's pretty close to the town, and it must be really recent if it didn't show on the map. HN. Bad news, I think I'm starting to see some rubble. I'm pretty sure that this crater was the town. Naruto didn't break stride, but his brain jumped at the words. That wasn't a small town by any means, no simple bandits could blow it off the map without everyone knowing about it. That's why I'm worried. Thoughts? Take the lead back, maybe send a clone ahead to scout. It might not be the actual town, it could just be a few outskirt farms. Naruto didn't argue with the voice in his head, summoning a clone into existence and giving the order to take off and scout the crater. It rocketed off as Naruto switched spots with Sasuke. We'll go at 3/4 of our original speed, give the clone time to check things out. This is what shadow clones were originally made for, and it was where they truly excelled at. Recon in a possibly dangerous area. Naruto felt confident that whatever his clone sent back to him would be valuable information. The clone popped. Well, it got dispelled by force. I see a dust cloud originating from the center of the crater ahead, Sasuke warned. Stop, Naruto halted the group. What are we up against, Naruto? You have a plan yet? Sakura's voice didn't make it to the blonde though, his mind was occupied with analyzing the short yet clear memory the clone had returned to him. There's one man in the center of the mess. He's blind. Or at least blindfolded. He also had some odd piercings, but I don't know if they're purely cosmetic or not. The thing is, he's sitting on some kind of throne fashioned from the rubble. And he dispelled my clone with something. It was like he pushed physical air at me, but the impact was way more solid than any wind jutsu has a right to be. That description puzzled even Sakura, and Naruto was just fine admitting that she was the brains in this operation. That wasn't a normal jutsu. Is he for sure hostile? He could just be a scared survivor. Naruto was a bit skeptical since his clone was taken out so easily, but that could have been his ego talking. Definitely your ego and pride talking, just go and see what the old man wants. Kurama says we should just go talk to him, so that's what we'll do. Be ready to fight, though. Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke walked out into the devastated field doing their best to come across as friendly. They weren't too sure if it would help since the guy was blind, but it wouldn't hurt to try. Excuse me, sir. Do you know what happened here? Naruto asked, stopping a few yards away from the seated man. The blindfolded man turned his head to face the trio. Ah, children. Come, sit with me. Naruto looked at first Sakura and Sasuke, and when he got a pair of shrugs he sat cross-legged in front of the man. Why are you sitting alone out here? Do you need any kind of help? The man smiled sadly before he answered, the story that brings me in front of you is a long one much too long for a single sitting. Naruto saw both of his teammates show their annoyance from the corner of his eyes. Sasuke was reserved and merely closed his eyes, but Sakura's was more obvious with the way her eye twitched. Do you know what happened to this town? Sasuke asked once he reopened his eyes. With a tilt of his head, the blind man said, they were crushed by the weight of their sins, boy. Blown to the side to make way for a new world's peace. Great, he's an end of the world kind of guy, Sakura mumbled under her breath. Okay, but what happened exactly? Naruto pushed. I will tell you, but you must first know that I am not here to fight any of you. You have enough of war on your plate as it is. Add one through a red flag or two. Naruto, be ready to defend yourself. I do not trust this man. The man shifted on his rubble chair before speaking again. I crushed these people, their sins were the fuel all pain needs, and instead of spreading to the world, I made sure it was contained to the sinners themselves. What? Sasuke shifted in place, resting a hand on his shuriken pouch. Sakura pulled her gloves on tighter, ready to start throwing fists at whatever she had to. I don't understand, who are you? Naruto asked, mentally preparing himself for an answer. The man stared up into the sky, his head tilted back as far as it would go even though he could not see. That is a good question. I have many names, and yet I have none. I am many people, and yet I am no one person. For the sake of ease, you may call me Pain. Naruto was used to old men talking in riddles and rhyme by now, so he followed most of that. And you, Pain, destroyed this entire town. On your own? You don't work with anyone? There was a deep, slow chuckle as the blindfolded man stood. No, Naruto, the organization I lead is not here with me. It is not yet their time to serve a god. How do you know his name? Sakura asked immediately. Who works for you? Sasuke's question followed soon after. Naruto stayed silent as realization dawned on him. Kurama gave off a low growl within his mind. This was a very, very dangerous man, and he was just sitting in front of him. The man stood then, prompting the 3 members of Team 7 to jump to their feet as well. We've had an eye on Naruto for quite some time, actually. Speaking of, I know of that little stunt you pulled last night. The same as I'm aware of the discord it caused among you. Sasuke looked sharply to Sakura for some kind of response, but she refused to meet his gaze and focused on the strange man. What are you talking about? Naruto demanded. He was confident that he would have known if they were being watched. Sakura, you failed to understand the implications that war brings. In times like these, villages like yours expect anything to go. You are taught to go to any lengths to shorten the war and save as many of your own people as possible. Unfortunately, that little girl and surviving man of that group had to be put through what you all did last night to achieve this. But this is war, and it was expected. Sakura relaxed a bit as she started to see the new viewpoint. On the other side of the coin, Sasuke and Naruto could have taken measures against the situation. Had they been given more time perhaps they would have, but what you two did can be considered despicable by any means, and your people will only believe it justified under the banner of war. Just know that the little girl's well-being is on your heads. Sasuke took his turn in softening his stance. Not everyone was as cold or hard as he could be, since not everyone had been broken and rebuilt like had been. His actions did have consequences, and what made it worse was that they wouldn't hurt him, but others. Naruto, you had the best understanding of what you were doing, but still decided to let events unfold the way they did. You let things drag out and become much worse than necessary, simply because you found it amusing that Sasuke was doing so well. Your sins weigh the heaviest. And what are you going to do about it, old man? Flatten me like this village. Naruto struggled not to snarl as he spoke. In truth, if this was the man he thought it could be, he would need Kurama's help. No, Naruto, I promised you that I wasn't here to fight any of you, the man began to turn away slowly. Naruto's eyes widened as his worst fears were shown on the man's cloak. Red clouds. Your time to die by hand has not yet come. These Akatsuki. Naruto yelled, and with less than a thought 5 tails burst from behind him. Naruto released every ounce of malice he could muster, doing his best to direct it at the leader of Akatsuki. There was a lot more he was capable of releasing now, nearly double of what he had used during Konoha's invasion, and it showed. The ground beneath his feet cracked and cratered, and even with his focus on the Akatsuki leader both Sakura and Sasuke were buckled by the feeling. I see you have grown since the last time I watched you, came the casual response. To Naruto's shock, a hand flicked out and then backward, flinging a piece of paper at Naruto. It flew too fast for even Naruto to avoid, and it stuck itself firmly to the right side of his forehead. The malice cut off, the tails disappeared, and Naruto fell shaking to his knees. He felt empty. Devoid of energy and warmth, and now he couldn't even feel Kurama. Kurama. His internal shout was as loud as he had ever managed, but there was only silence in response. We got him, Sasuke's eyes lit up in the now familiar pattern of his eternal Mangekyo, and Sakura blitzed herself to the second gate. The couple flew forward, flying at the turned back of the man. Naruto was too weak to tell them to stand down, all he could do was support himself on his shaking arms. Naruto saw fire streaming from Sasuke's mouth, and he knew that a massive wave of heat and destruction would soon follow. Sakura was ready to launch her fist forward, green energy swirling around her hand. Naruto felt confident in his team, but it all changed when he heard the cold voice of the man once more. Shinra Tensei. Sasuke and Sakura were flung back, and Naruto followed them soon after. He had no way of catching himself, and the powerful push sent him crashing into and through the rubble. Without Kurama's healing power or even his own strength, Naruto was in serious danger of dying. He felt his arm snap, his leg get cut open by a sharp rock, and the impact of the hard ground with every tumble he took away from the man. The three shinobi of Konoha stopped about 50 yards from their enemy, Naruto remaining on the ground in severe pain. I do have to thank you for such a tag, Naruto. Had you not given it to Suna while it was under the control of a certain snake, I never would have been able to buy it off of him. Naruto cursed within his throbbing head. I have only come to tell you that I do hope you win your little war. I may not pick one, but I do favor one side over the other. The man you captured last night was on his way to Orochimaru, so you should learn of his location soon enough. Also, the border towns in Frost Country have already been militarized against you. You can either return home or purge them for me. It makes no difference to my plans. Naruto managed to painfully tilt his head up to look at Pain once more. He stood calmly, facing the trio without a care in the world. He must have been using some form of voice amplification because he was speaking in the same tone from this distance. Sakura was soon at Naruto's side, removing the tag and healing what she could. Pain tilted his head as he watched Sakura snap Naruto's arm back together and heal it manually, happy that the tag worked. Now that I know that I wasn't sold faulty goods, I will take my leave. Know this, children. You are some of the only mortals to live after being face to face with a living god. Naruto braced himself on one arm and focused on regaining his chakra back, as well as his connection to Kurama. If it was truly his tag, then he knew that the more chakra someone had and tried to use, the sooner the effect would wear off after removal. Also, Naruto. Pain straightened and spread his arms wide. By meeting me, you are all that much closer to finding Hinata. And then he was gone. No flash, no smoke, just gone. And Naruto was livid. His chakra seeped out of his tenketsu, doing its best to reopen everything. Both of his teammates backed away from what they knew was a coming explosion. Red began to leak from him, rolling off of him in growing waves. A dam broke, and Naruto was explosively shrouded in gold. Black marks adorned his body, and he radiated with furious power. Please don't make everything explode. Sasuke asked hesitantly. Naruto let the cloak fade and did his best to calm his breathing. Hinata would have to wait. There was still a mission to do. Let's move. We have to make sure the rest of the villages and towns are okay. We have no idea if this was the only target, so we'll check them all before getting into Frost. Then we'll move west and link up with Neji. Sakura knew that this tone meant it was time for business and nothing else. Tonight, she would try to talk to him, hopefully after he had calmed down some. With that in mind, she followed him north with Sasuke, past the ruins of the town and towards their next objective. I know you're upset. I'm inside you. I'm always inside you. Ugh, don't say it like that. Whatever it takes to get you talking again. You haven't said anything since we met Pain, and that was hours ago. What did you expect? And you've seen the rest of the villages today, all of them destroyed in the exact same way. He isn't Akatsuki's leader for nothing. Exactly. So why would he be so stupid to show himself to us like that? I don't think he's stupid, Naruto. That little show he put on for you had a purpose. What do you think it was? That got Naruto thinking as he led his team even further towards the Frost Country border. Their pace was furious, but there weren't any complaints yet. He wanted me to know that he's everywhere. He knew everything important about me and even a bit about Sasuke and Sakura. Good. And he let us know that this war isn't our only concern, and there isn't even a guarantee that countries are the only ones involved. Akatsuki could strike out at any time they wanted. What else? He knows where Hinata is. If Akatsuki doesn't have her, then one of their members will know who does. Naruto, he cut our link. Think about that. He did what should have been impossible and cut off all of your chakra. Only you or your sensei should be able to do that. You heard him. He bought my tag from Orochimaru. I gave the tag to the Sand siblings to help Gaara sleep, so no doubt they had it looked over and turned into their Kazekage before they used it. And of fucking course the real Kazekage was dead. I feel like a big part of his appearance was to show you that you aren't invincible. He even shrugged off a five-tailed presence. All he did was show me one of my weaknesses to work on, and that no one is invincible. That includes him. Naruto. We're getting pretty close to the border. Can we take a break before we cross into enemy territory? Sakura spoke up from behind her leader. Naruto's head snapped up and he noticed that the sun had sunk below the treetops. He had spent more than a couple hours alone with his thoughts and with Kurama. He looked behind him next and he felt more guilty than he ever had before. Both of his teammates were breathing heavily, their chests and shoulders heaving with every step. His brutal pace hadn't slowed in the slightest and their non-Biju enhanced bodies were feeling the toll. Like real soldiers, like real friends, they were prepared to follow Naruto on his hatred-fueled warpath with no rest. It was a good thing Sakura spoke up to snap him out of his reverie. Naruto came to an abrupt stop, both surprising and relieving his haggard teammates. "I'm sorry, you guys. I was up in my head this whole time. We'll rest for the night and head out in the morning." Sasuke looked up from his position leaning against a tree, "Not that I'm not grateful or anything, but what happened to scouting things out at night?" Naruto glanced between his two closest friends before sending out a pair of clones. "After today I think I owe you guys a decent night's rest. We can have a small fire after dark if we use only the driest wood." "Sakura, how far away is the border?" "About an hour and a half at standard travel speed, less than half that if we keep up our speed from today." She was bent at her waist, rubbing at her calves while taking deep breaths. Naruto was absolutely amazed she made it that long. Then a small fire shouldn't be anything to worry about unless there's a scouting party. I have to agree with Sasuke on this, though. You don't have to worry about us, we'll be fine in a few hours and we can go with your original plan to scout at night. Naruto smiled as he had a pair of clones take their tents and begin to set them up for them. "Oh, scouting isn't our primary objective anymore. We're just double-checking on what that Pain guy told us." Sasuke happily down once his tent had been taken from him. "And if what he said was true? We just gonna head into sound and link up with the second team?" Naruto's smile grew wider. "Oh, Sasuke. Don't you remember Team 7's original team dynamic and purpose?" Sakura answered with a slight tone, "Yes, assault-oriented striking team, originally of the 4th degree, but elevated to 2nd just before you left on your training trip." Naruto stared at her for a hard second, his clones stopping to do the same. "I mean, I was looking for a simple assault, but hey that works too." "What the hell is with the degrees?" Sasuke asked. 4th degree is the lowest and it's always given to genin teams no matter what their specialty is. The higher your degree, the more priority missions you're given. They're harder, more important, things like that, the resident encyclopedia dictionary almanac informed her teammates. "Well, in that case, we're gonna give everyone a reason to promote us to the 1st degree. Because we have a few Kumo-infested towns to wipe off the map." Sakura was quick to interject, "What about the civilians? I can understand last night a bit now, but if we just blow up civilians, then we're no better than Kumo or Orochimaru." Naruto flinched at the implication. "She has a point, kid. You will need a more precise approach to this than simply letting me cut loose." "You're right," Naruto conceded as his first clones returned with wood. "We will talk about this over dinner. Kurama, we're still in the hunting area, right?" "About half a mile out of the suggested border, but it's no real problem." Naruto ran through the summoning seals and placed a hand to the ground, allowing a three-tailed Kurama to emerge. With that many tails, he was about the size of a large wolf. "He's so gorgeous." Sakura clapped and covered her smile. Kurama showed his teeth and his sleek coat appeared to shimmer as he looked at Sasuke. "Watch out, Uchiha. Sounds like you have some competition." And the large fox took off into the growing darkness to the sounds of Naruto's laughter. Underneath it was Sakura's giggles and Sasuke's low muttering of curses. Naruto sat in front of a small fire, his teammates seated similarly around the ring of light and warmth, fresh venison between their hands. Kurama lay in a rolled ball of fur off to the side and Naruto caught Sakura moving to pet him several times. For Sasuke's sake, he stopped her every time. In this rare time of his head being completely private, Naruto thought. Not that he didn't uselessly think or anything, it's just now he thought about the bigger things in life. He actually had a lead on Hinata. If Akatsuki did have her, then it seemed like Naruto would have to start headhunting for S-ranked criminals. No problems there. The problems were with Naruto himself. He had changed so much over the course of a few years and he wasn't too sure he liked all of the changes. He wasn't sure if Hinata would. What happened to the kid who believed he could save everyone? Why didn't that kid tell him to save that little girl like Sakura said he should have? Was he really starting to enjoy the wanton destruction and humiliation of his enemies? That wasn't him. That was Anko, and no way in hell would he become an Anko. Eyes. Am I a good person? Naruto asked hesitantly once his own venison had disappeared. Sakura glanced at her boyfriend before asking, "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if that Pain guy had a point? As crazy as he was, what if the weight of sins really is what will sink us?" "You've spent too much time talking to old men, Naruto. Say what's on your mind without twisting it up," Sasuke grunted. He came across a bit brash, but Naruto knew he was doing his best to be supportive. "I used to be so different. I hated killing and I thought I could save everyone. Hang on, I have an idea." Naruto disappeared in a sudden flash, startling both of his teammates. Kurama didn't stir and was likely still sleeping. As Sasuke waited patiently for Naruto's return, Sakura once again inched closer and closer to Kurama and his magnificent fur. The flash of gold scared her back into her original seat. "I wrote this around the time I became a genin. Jiraiya-sensei told me it would help, but it seems so different now that I'm reading it so much later." Naruto held up a folded, slightly wrinkled piece of paper in the firelight. "What's it say?" "What is it?" Sakura pushed. Naruto was silent for a second, but he eventually read the paper aloud. "Naruto Uzumaki's list alive life by shinobi have no room for honor. That is for samurai and dead ninja. But a man is allowed to be as honorable as any samurai. All ninja are tools to protect the village from harm. But all real men put what they love above all else. I will never abandon my friends. Nor will I ever disappoint my family. I will not let what happens on a mission affect what happens in my home. Mercy isn't for the weak, it is for the deserving. Death may be mine to deliver, but it isn't mine to control. If I am able to help someone, I will put their needs above my own. If I ever have to choose between honor and duty, I will choose both. Or die trying." "I don't know what you mean, that all sounds just fine," Sasuke asserted once Naruto finished. "Exactly. The problem is that I feel like I've been drifting further and further away from the kind of person I want to be. 12-year-old me would never have let that little girl stay. He wouldn't have jumped straight to eradicating villages without considering civilians as I did." Sakura took his old argument and said, "12-year-old you was never in wartime. Is that what's going to happen?" Naruto asked cynically. "I'll go through war after war and lose a little more of my values and humanity as time goes on." Sakura had no response to that. The leader of the fucking Akatsuki had a better grasp of right and wrong than I do. He knows who deserves to die and he believes that he's dishing out some kind of justice. What am I doing? Sasuke lowered his chin, deep in thought. "I've been going around just reading orders and killing people. They're nameless to me, but they had friends. Probably family. Odds are they all had their own Hinata and I took them all from her when I didn't have to. And the fucked up thing is that I'm perfectly willing to keep doing it. I don't care about others so much anymore, as long as I keep you guys and everyone I care about safe I'll kill whoever I have to." Sasuke picked up his head and he had a determined look in his eye that Naruto knew meant that he had thought out what he had to say. "The thing is, Naruto, trauma changes people. It either forces them to grow or it crushes them. You'd never be crushed by something like this or anything you've been through, so you've been forced to grow. The more painful the experience is, the harsher you have to grow, it's just the way it works. You both saw it happen to me after the incident, and you, Naruto, were the first to start pulling me out from under the crushing weight. Thank you for that, and know that we're both ready to help you with whatever it is you may need." Naruto sat and stared, recognizing more than a few little things from the first time he had properly met Sasuke. He would never get used to just how much the Uchiha was capable of saying when he wanted to, but Naruto would also be forever grateful for it. "You ever consider becoming a sage?" "Fuck off." Sakura interjected the light banter, "He's right, you know. We're right here, and nothing is going to change that. We'll help you through this war the same way you'll help us, and we'll help you get Hinata back. I'm sure once she's with you you'll feel more complete and a lot happier with who you are." Sakura locked eyes with Sasuke for a split second, chewing the inside of her lower lip as she looked at her boyfriend. "That's just how this sort of thing works." Naruto stood and gave his friends one last smile. "Thank you, guys. Really, I got really lucky with my team. I'm going to head in for the night, my sentry clone will wake us at dawn." Naruto had turned to make his way towards his tent, but he was stopped by a slim yet strong pair of arms wrapping themselves around his chest. A third hand placed itself on his shoulder, and Naruto knew even Sasuke was getting in on this impromptu group hug. "You're a good person, Naruto. We don't doubt you, so don't go doubting yourself," Sakura mumbled. "Yeah, quit flipping your shit, you pansy, good old Sasuke." Naruto laughed lightly as he disentangled himself from the support of his friends. "Go to bed, you guys. I'll be fine in the morning. Kurama, you can either sleep out here or dispel yourself and head back into my mind. Your choice." The lack of response led Naruto to believe that the fox would sleep in the real forest tonight. "Good night, you guys. This is about as close as I'm comfortable taking us. I could send in a clone, but if they have a sensor, which they almost certainly do, it would be found pretty quickly. Sasuke, can you see from here?" Naruto had his team up on a cliffside, laying on their stomachs and scoping out a village a good mile away. It was true a good sensor ninja could reach well over half a mile, but if they kept their chakra usage low enough they should be safe from this distance. Sasuke activated his Mangekyo and narrowed his eyes in focus. "I only see Kumo shinobi on patrol and setting up defenses. No civilians in sight." Naruto scowled. "Great. So, this is either a scorched earth or a search and rescue mission now. Do you see any teams or single shinobi on the outskirts?" Yes, it looks like a duo is headed off to the east side of the village to get wood. They have a wagon and axes. Naruto looked at Sakura, silently asking for her input on the situation. Since everyone on the team was technically capable of leading one of their own, Naruto thought it was a good idea to get ideas whenever he could. If Sasuke could trap one of them in a genjutsu and lead the other one far enough away to eliminate one and capture the other, we could interrogate him for information on the village and maybe even the rest of the villages. Naruto nodded to himself, already liking the plan. Sasuke spoke up then, visual genjutsu still uses chakra, what if the sensor picks it up? Most soldiers will travel either to the front edge of the woods or the back end of the resident sensor's range. If Sasuke can get one with his cheating eyes from about 20 yards away, he should be safe enough for light chakra use. Sasuke, is that pair cutting at the front edge of the woods or are they moving deeper in? Naruto asked. They've started cutting about 2/3 of a mile in. Okay, Kurama says that should be about the effective range of their sensor. You just have to hit one with your genjutsu from your max distance and you should be fine. Just keep your kill quick, quiet, and don't use chakra. Sasuke laid a hand on the hilt of his sword and said, be back in 5. Sasuke returned with a Kumo Chunin trailing him. The Kumo-nin had a glazed look in his eye and he clearly had no idea what was going on. I'm telling you, those eyes are totally cheating. Good job, Sasuke. Sakura, immobilize him please. Sakura nodded and knelt down by the dazed man's legs. Her hand came up by her waist as she looked for the best place to immobilize the man in question. Suddenly, her fist flew forward. There was a sick squelch right before a sharp cracking sound and then she pulled her bloody fist from between his legs. The Kumo man snapped out of the genjutsu, no doubt in horrifying agony. His mouth was stretched wide as tears streamed down his face, but no sound or air escaped his lips. As Naruto looked on in morbid fascination, he finally heard the pained squeak that came from the target. Oh my gods, Sakura. Sasuke said as he backed away. The prisoner was now on his side, cupping the crushed remains of his manhood. I was expecting some kind of medical thing. Sakura shook the blood and pus from her hand as she responded haughtily, if you boys can enjoy torturing a group of people, then I should be allowed to enjoy my own bit of torture. That's a red flag. Tell Sasuke to run as far away from her as possible. We still need information from him and we can't wait a whole day for him to numb the pain to talk, Naruto said. Sasuke perked up at that, how about 3 days? I can be back in less than a minute. Naruto knew vaguely what he meant, it was one of Itachi's most feared techniques. Go ahead, just get what we need from him. Sasuke nodded, turned the downed man to face him, then went completely still for nearly a full minute. When he moved again, the Kumo ninja convulsed on the ground, but Sasuke quickly used his sword to put an end to his suffering. Naruto was honestly relieved for him. Alright, what's the deal? How did it go? Sakura asked her boyfriend. I'm not quite as good as Itachi yet, so I only had 2 days to talk to him. Plenty of time, but he made me promise to kill him and end his phallic torture. His eyes then flicked to Sakura in fear, but he did tell me that Kumo always makes civilians evacuate before they dig themselves in. Aside from this village, there's 3 more as we head west. Great, Naruto sat down, made 3 clones, and started to amass nature chakra. That's 1 for each of us. Oh, Naruto, you spoil me. Have fun, big guy. You're letting Kurama out. Won't that tell them who's responsible? Sakura asked. Yeah, but who cares? We're already at war. This'll just put a nice little chunk into Kumo's forces and we can hit the next village before word reaches them. I'll take the next one, Sasuke can take the third, and Sakura you can cut loose on the last one. What makes you think I can destroy an entire village? Sakura asked worriedly. You can demolish buildings with a tap of your knuckles, you can open the gates, and you can literally turn invincible, Sasuke answered. He finished just as Naruto finished gathering the needed chakra. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Naruto stood and handed Sakura one of his Hirishin kunai. Sakura, you're the strongest one here, do you think you can hurl this thing a mile and over their village? She looked at the kunai, then felt its weight and balance. I mean, probably. It's worth a shot. You ready in there? Oh, I am going to enjoy this. Naruto placed a hand on the kunai again, coating it in an application of Gale Palm. That should make it much easier. Let her rip. Sakura reared back, focused her chakra, and hurled her arm forward with everything in her. There was a small shockwave as the kunai left her hand. It had both broken the sound barrier and threw up a small cloud of dirt. You overshot it by half a mile, Sasuke deadpanned. I can make that work. Naruto exclaimed before flashing out of sight. Is it bad if I said that was pretty hot? Sasuke asked once they were alone. How long do you think we have? Sakura asked him back. Probably not long enough for anything good. One of the sitting clones coughed. Guys, we're still here. Sakura shrugged, yeah, but we know you'd erase that memory or whatever before dispelling. Then the clones disappeared and they heard a deafening roar from the direction of the village. There was Kurama in all his 9-tailed glory. Think we're far enough away? Fuck, I hope so. Day of Konoha invasion. Hinata woke up laying on her side, blood coating her arms and her head throbbing. Everything had happened so quickly, and there were so many. Zabuza could only hold off most of them, and it fell to Hinata and Haku to keep Karen safe. Hinata still wasn't sure why Kumo and Iwanin were attacking them specifically. If anything, they should have been going for bigger fish if they were part of the invasion. You're finally awake, a voice said to Hinata's far left. She tried to activate her Byakugan, but found that doing so made her nearly pass out once more. Please don't do that again, you tried to activate your Taijutsu the last time you woke up, and that was half a day ago. She was in worse shape than she thought. Who are you? Hinata asked as she struggled to sit up and face the speaker. You can call me Toby. Most of my friends do anyway. I saved you from that group who was attacking you. Hinata finally sat up fully and got her first view of the stranger who saved her. He wore a mask, a red swirly one that only exposed one eye. Probably blind in the other one. He was also wrapped in a black cloak, so she couldn't see the rest of him. Why? She managed to croak out. You are very important to a certain someone, Hinata. Someone who I hope I can enlist the help of one of these days. Hinata's eyes narrowed as she came to a conclusion. If you think that I'll just let you use me to get to Naruto, then you are sorely mistaken. There was a light chuckle, but it wasn't intimidating in the least. No, you mistake me for the scum that attacked you. I don't plan to force or bribe Naruto into anything. I just want him to feel like he owes me enough to help me, so I rescued you. His princess. Hinata relaxed and frowned a blush at the words, I wouldn't say princess or anything. Another soft laugh from Toby. Don't deny it, Hyuga. I had one of my own, long ago. That's actually why I need your boyfriend's help. How is that any different than using us? Hinata asked. He'll have a choice. I'll bring you back once it's safe and you're healthy, and he will be able to choose whether to help me or not. He likely will, since my goals make his enemy mine. Hinata could accept that answer, but before she could say anything she shivered. Toby stood, removed his cloak, and moved to drape it over her shoulders. Hinata smiled in thanks, wrapping the warm fabric tightly around her shoulders. That's when she saw the first sign of trouble. Adorning the cloak were red clouds, the same symbol Naruto had told her to avoid during one of their various dates. Your Akatsuki. Her tone was accusing, but she could make no real move in protest. It's my current cover, yes. You see, my plan revolves around Akatsuki's letter. I've met the man several times, and I have a great need of him. Hinata was still skeptical, but she didn't have too much of a choice in the matter. She was honestly just grateful that her rescuer wasn't some kind of pervert. Then she noticed her surroundings or the lack of them. Everywhere she looked was the same. Gray, floating chunks of land with a dark sky and horizon. She wasn't even sure how there was light enough to see. Where are we? She asked with a new apprehension in her voice. Toby tilted his head to the side before answering, I'm surprised it took you so long to notice. This is something along the lines of my personal pocket dimension. I utilize a special space-time jutsu, not too much unlike Naruto's Hirishin. I'm the only way in and out, so you'll be safe here. Hinata was both relieved and worried at that statement. There was no escape, but there was also no danger other than this Toby person himself. And how long do I have to stay here? I can't risk bringing a Mednin in here, the fewer people that know about both this place and you the better. You'll probably be naturally healed in a couple of months, at least to the point to where you can start rebuilding your strength. What? No, I can just regain my strength at home. I don't want to burden you for so long. Hinata was panicking a little bit now. How would Naruto react to such a long separation? How would she react? Don't worry about it, it's really no problem. You know, I fought a lot of Hyuga in my day, I could also help you train when you're stronger. Just something to keep you occupied while the heat on you dies down. This isn't making any sense, why can't I just go back now? Hinata, war has just started and Naruto will be at the center of it. By extension, you will be at the center of it. If someone can get you, they get Naruto. For all of our sakes, I need to make sure you can protect yourself before I return you to a war-torn world. Hinata was starting to see Toby's reasoning, but she still didn't like it. Okay, but what's your big plan with all of this? At that, Toby turned his back. Perhaps once we trust each other more I can tell you more about myself. I will expect the same from you though, little princess. There was an odd swirl, and Hinata saw Toby disappear into his own head. It made no sense, but that's what she saw. And for some reason, as she laid down once more, she felt like she wasn't being told the whole truth. 2 months after Konoha invasion. Hinata opened her eyes and took the first conscious breath of her morning. By the lack of the breakfast smell, Toby was obviously absent. She sat up and pulled down the light blanket, bunching the fabric down around her knees before pulling her legs free. Her savior had been very generous and accommodating the last 2 months, bringing her ample amounts of food and some furniture for her comfort. Her favorite gift was the bed. She was nearly completely healed now, and only her left wrist really gave her any problems anymore. She had gotten really lucky that nothing had been broken. "Hey, sorry I'm late for breakfast," Toby said as he phased in. As many times as she had seen it, Hinata still wasn't used to the sight. "It's fine, I can cook for myself as well, you know," she joked lightly. "I'd imagine since the days I can't make it here the food I find is usually better than mine. So what's the plan for today?" Hinata asked. Sometimes, Toby would bring games with him or even some books on lucky days. "I was thinking if you're feeling up to it, how about some light training?" Hinata froze, her hand stuck in place over the fruit bowl. "Really? I mean, Naruto's training his ass off, so why shouldn't you?" That struck a nerve in the girl, the mention of that lovable blonde made her heart ache. "Naruto, oh yeah. I also found out where he's training for the week, would you like to maybe take a secret peek at him?" Toby offered excitedly. For some reason, he seemed to take a bit more interest in pleasing Hinata lately. "And Toby, that would be amazing." Toby nodded enthusiastically before saying, "It will have to be pretty quick so he doesn't notice us, but I think we could pull it off. Would you like to see him with or without clothes?" Hinata screamed a little as she smacked the arm of her friend, her face blushing wildly at the implication. "You're right, I wouldn't be able to hold you off of him if we went to see him during a shirtless session. Clothed it is." Before Hinata could berate him further, she felt his hand touch her arm and she was overtaken by the most uncomfortable feeling she could ever remember. Her eyes opened to see a new lush and green landscape before she could make sense of the sensation. "SHH, he's over there. Don't do anything dumb and make me restrain you, okay? I'm really trusting you with this. If he finds out about you, he could endanger all of Konoha by abandoning the war." Hinata was still a bit wary of Toby's squirrely logic, but her excitement drowned all of it out. She snuck through the brush with Toby and before long she heard the sounds of a massive battle going on. Leave it to Naruto to train with live combat. In the newly made clearing ahead, she saw her beloved. She actually saw hundreds of him. A few hundred were playing around with a Rasengan each, occasionally blowing themselves up. The other couple hundred all seemed to be fighting a single Naruto, presumably the real one. He was cut in several places, bloodied and bruised, but he was simply amazing to watch. Behind him sat a massive toad. It wasn't Gamabunta, who she met only once, but his size was comparable. He appeared to be barking orders. Hinata gave a sharp inhale of amazement when the Narutos started to fling ninjutsu around to supplement their taijutsu. The original Naruto jumped high into the air, spinning wildly to avoid what appeared to be air bullets. He fired off his own, followed by an extremely destructive vacuum wave. The clones either were destroyed or pushed back, and Naruto flung a trio of shuriken before they multiplied by 100 or 2. A storm of metal met the combined prowess of every clone stone wall, and the original Naruto fired off a massive pressure damage to break it all down. When he did so, roughly half of the clones were missing. Hinata felt elation at him having eliminated so many in a single blow, but then he leaped once more into the air. Every one of the missing clones burst from the ground, each brandishing a Rasengan and moving to finish the fight. The real Naruto unleashed a maelstrom from his mouth, the great breakthrough demolishing everything beneath him in an instant. The remaining clones near the wall's rubble mimicked him, blasting their own wind at him. Naruto pulled a kunai, coated it in chakra, and gave a single powerful downward slash. The wind blew past him, but he remained unruffled. He must have cut through the jutsu with his own wind. Naruto then dove back into the middle of the clones, taking them out individually with his taijutsu. Hinata was in literal awe, and I only increased when Naruto finished, heard an order, and created another few hundred clones without hesitation. Nothing but a single breath's respite and he was back into the fray. He really was amazing. Hinata lurched as she felt the sensation again, a twisting, flipping feeling that upset her stomach a little. The feeling was accompanied by the despair she felt from being separated once more, but she knew Toby thought it was for the best. "Well, is he impressive or what?" Toby asked happily from his spot on the bed. He's my Naruto alright. I guess I can't let him get too far ahead of me, right? That's the spirit. We'll start with some light exercises and in a week or so we can move on to light sparring. You'll catch up to him before too long, little princess. Trust me." 6 months after Konoha invasion, Hinata finished the form she had been working on. She had no real way to advance in her old style, so she honed what she knew to the point of likely being able to do it in her sleep. Toby had actually started to talk to her more, telling her about an old team he used to have and other small things like that. She was never given any names, but she knew by now that Toby was very secretive in nature. Wiping the sweat from her brow, Hinata decided to work on her new technique. She had figured out the Kaiten in only 2 months and Toby's help, and she admittedly did not enjoy how dizzy repetitive use left her. Toby had suggested modifying it a bit or creating a new defense altogether. She had gotten much faster and much stronger. Her sparring sessions with Toby usually left both of them covered in bruises now, but she knew he was holding back the majority of his strength. With her newfound speed, she got an idea. If she could somehow keep her arms moving fast enough and emitting a constant Jiken stream, she could stand still while being surrounded by a shield. So far, all she could manage was near total protection of her front side, but she was flexible enough now to reach her back. The sound of Toby's now familiar portal opening made her stop her daydreaming. "Hello, little princess. I had an idea to help you with your new jutsu." Hinata noticed the wooden bucket in his hand and she was immediately wary of any possible water to be thrown her way. "What is it, Toby?" The masked man held the bucket aloft, saying, "I'll throw these into the air and you hit them all before they can hit the ground. And every round the pieces will get small and smaller, so you will have to be faster and more precise." Hinata peered into the bucket and saw a multitude of leaves. It would be very, very difficult, but she was willing to bet on it working to some degree. Hinata flared her Byakugan, activating them and adopting a ready stance. "Let's give this a shot." 11 months after Konoha invasion, Hinata was used to the swirling feeling by now, and the gray area was even more normal to her. Toby had just taken her for yet another peek at Naruto, something that was becoming more and more frequent. He said that Naruto was leaving his secretive training grounds more and more to train as destructively as he likes to do. To be honest, Hinata found it hot as hell. "What you thinking about?" Toby asked lightly, swinging his feet back and forth on the high stool he sat on. Hinata had convinced her friend to bring her more and more things to his little dimension, and she was honestly quite comfortable. "Oh, nothing. Not naked Naruto, that's for sure. Okami, why did I say that? Oh, you're already that age. That's adorable. I brought this on myself." Hinata's thoughts followed a deep blush. "I'm not even 16 yet." Toby's legs stopped swinging as he seemed deep in thought. 16, what an age to be. "You know, I had my first woman when I was 16. Hinata recoiled, taken aback by the personal information. Was it a sign that they were on trusting terms now? "Really? 16. Toby laughed then, "No, that's total bullshit." "Well, how old are you?" Maybe she could still get some info on him yet. I haven't counted years in so long. Say, how old would you say that Kakashi guy from your village is?" "Odd way to date oneself, but why not?" "I would guess something around his mid-30s. Maybe. Then I am probably in my mid-30s. Maybe." There was a small lapse of silence, and before long Hinata found herself losing it. Usually when Toby was around it was all training or jokes. "Toby? Are we friends?" The masked man sat still for nearly a minute, contemplating the question seriously. It had been so long since he had a real friend, and Hinata reminded him so much of her. "Obito." "What? My name? My real name is Obito. Toby is the name I use to keep me safe. From Akatsuki and whoever else is interested." Hinata was actually speechless. That was huge. A simple yes would have done just fine, but she had no doubts now. Even if Naruto didn't want to help Obito, with getting back the love of his life, she would help him. And that meant Naruto would help him. How could she possibly show the amount of trust she had just been given in return? "You don't have to say anything. Just know that I do see you as a friend, my only one as of now actually. I have a few things to get done today, I'll see you later, little princess." Day of Naruto's meeting with Pain. "Hinata. We have to take a field trip right freaking now." Obito yelled as he entered his time space. Hinata was just finishing practicing her personal defense jutsu when Obito interrupted her. "Let me change out of my sweaty clothes first. 5 minutes and I'll be back." Obito quickly warped back out, leaving Hinata to rush to the water basin to rinse off a bit. She never passed up an opportunity for a field trip, they always involved seeing Naruto. And they'd only been almost caught once, so the track record was pretty good. Rinsed and changed, Hinata waited for her masked friend to return. It didn't take him too long, and he was more frazzled than usual. It slightly worried her, but she didn't let herself get too worried. "What's the occasion?" Hinata asked as she watched Obito fidget. Pain left his stronghold. "He's going to intercept Naruto to test a few things, and this is the only time you'll probably get to see him in action until we fight him for real." Hinata felt her heart jump. Pain was the man that Obito needed Naruto's help to defeat. If he was moving to fight Naruto now, he won't kill Naruto, not yet at least. "And I'll have to keep us in a constant state of intangibility, so no one senses us with two of us. I can only really risk 2.5 minutes. We won't have long, but it'll have to do." "Obito, what are you talking about?" Hinata was almost hysterical. "One of my jutsu lets me become intangible. It's derived from my space-time jutsu. We'll need it so none of the hyper-aware people we'll be spying on can't sense us. I'll also need you to have your Byakugan active." "What? Why?" "There's going to be something there that no eyes can actually see, and I'm hoping yours can." It was a lot happening in a short amount of time, but Hinata had to try. For Obito. For Naruto. "Let's go." "What's with all of the rubble and dirt here? Who's that blind old guy? Why is Naruto just sitting in front of him?" Hinata's whispered questions fired off rapidly. To be fair, she only had a couple of minutes to figure out everything. This used to be a pretty big town. Maybe a quarter the size of all of Konoha. That blind old guy is a body Pain is using. He's smart and he switched out one of his bodies for one he doesn't actually use. Clever of him. Keep his real look a secret. I don't know why Naruto is sitting down. What do you mean switched bodies? What kind of jutsu lets you do that other than the Yamanaka kind? He has a special eye called the Rinnegan. It's more powerful than both the Byakugan and the Sharingan put together, and one of its many abilities is to control 6 different bodies. Each of them can have a separate power of the eye, but I don't know what they all are yet. The real Pain is using this old body to hide what he normally looks like. Those eyes probably had something to do with Obito's plans then. Why is he blindfolded? So Naruto can't see his eyes. They'd be a dead giveaway. Then how can he see? That's what your Byakugan is for. His best spying technique is actually a summon. It's a massive chameleon, and it can't be sensed by anything other than some barrier jutsu. He refused to tell me anything else. Can you see it lurking around anywhere? I don't see anything, but how would the summon help him? Obito was frustrated, but he tried not to let it show. If you can't see the chameleon, it's pointless. One of the Rinnegan's powers is that every person or summon that has a Rinnegan of its own shares vision. The chameleon has one, so he can see through that eye, while that fake body is blindfolded. Suddenly, everyone in the rubble field was standing, and then Naruto was blazing red with Kurama's power. Hinata tensed, ready to jump into the battle and help as much as she could. Naruto fell to his knees, power gone. Hinata tried to move forward, but Obito's hand stopped her. Suddenly, she was back in her little pocket home, devastated by her inaction. No. Naruto. There was a thump behind her, and she spun quickly. Obito had fallen to his side, shaking slightly. She was at his side in an instant, feeling guilty for not considering how difficult the feat must have been for him. Obito, he wasn't responding to her, so she did the only thing she could think to do. The very thing she had dreamed about and was convinced would never happen. She removed the mask. She could understand why he wanted to never be seen without it. He bore a gruesome twisted scar of some kind, and the entire right side of his face was twisted and disfigured. Somehow, that eye had survived, but his left socket was empty. Hinata ignored the sight and leaned close, placing her ear near her friend's mouth. She felt more than heard the small breath, and she sat back in relief. Obito's one eyelid fluttered rapidly before opening slowly, and Hinata swore she saw a hint of red before it faded to black. Then, his eye widened in realization, and he turned away hastily while groping for his red mask. Why would you do that? His tone was both harsh and hurt, and Hinata's chest stung. I was worried about you. Well, you didn't have to remove my fucking mask. You didn't have to look at me. I didn't know what to do, Obito. I was scared for you and I just what, Hinata? He didn't even call her little princess. I'm not a Menin. Hinata defended. Maybe if I was I would have known the right thing to do, but I'm not, okay? I just did my best for you. Obito had his mask back on now. And he sat with his back turned, his breaths coming heavy and hostile. Whatever. Just train or whatever, I'll be back in a few days. We need to make contact with Naruto soon, and I have to go find out when the best time to it is. Hinata didn't even get to say goodbye before he was gone, swirled into the mask he loved so much. She held back her tears, and she moved to make herself a small lunch. Life would go on, tea was just a fight. All friends fought, but soon enough she'd be with Naruto again, and she could make it up to Obito.